Perfect. Thanks very much, Ms. Dunbar. Welcome to those in attendance at this remote meeting of Aberdeen City Licensing Board on Tuesday, the 2nd of February 2021. This is the first meeting, obviously, of 2021. Please note the meeting will be recorded and published online for public access after the meeting. And members all, please keep your cameras on for the duration of the meeting, but you must mute your mics unless you're invited to speak. Please use the raising of your hand if you wish to speak. The reasons for keeping your cameras on, members, is so that we can prove that you were in attendance at all time in the meeting. So it's slightly different from other meetings. So if you could keep your cameras on, it's a slight change to the way we're operating. The licensing board contains quasi-judicial business, and members are reminded that they should not leave the room or the meeting during consideration of any application. If you need to leave the room, please advise the clerk so it be recorded in the minute. At this stage, I'll just ask the clerk to do a roll call so that we know we're all in attendance.
No problem, Convener. There's a couple of hands up. Do you want to see what they're about? I think Councillor Dunbar and Andrew Gilchrist have both got their hands up.
Councillor Dunbar?
Yeah, I'd like to request that we do get a comfort break at some point because it's quite a long agenda this morning.
Yeah, no problem at all. We'll see how it goes, and then we'll take a view of what time seems to be appropriate. But if anybody does need it, please just let me know either in the meeting chat or by just raising your hand, and I'll be more than happy to stop you for that.
Thank you,
Mr. Gilchrist. I think yours was a historic legacy hand, was it?
Hand down now.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so that is all. Yeah. Leslie, can you put your hand down? Thanks.
Yeah, sorry, Andrew, your hand's still up as well.
Well, it's down on my screen.
All right, okay. It's up on mine for some reason. Okay, not to worry.
Yeah, it's still up on mine as well.
That's great. It's not showing on mine. Okay, anyway. Okay, thank you all very much.
Okay. Yeah, so
oh, sorry, Mr. Munro, just one moment. Councillor McClellan.
Thanks, Convener. It was just on the back of what you said. It was just to clarify with legal that we do have to keep our cameras on then to be recorded as and vote at the end of the decision.
Yeah. Just to give a wee bit of background to that. Obviously, if as the convener says, it's just to avoid any scenario where there's a suggestion that a member might not have been present for the whole of an item, because obviously if the camera's off, there's nothing. Obviously, we're not suggesting somebody will go for a cup of tea or go to the toilet or what, but it's just to prove that if we have it on a recording and your camera's been on the whole time, then it's clear that you've been there for the whole item. Excuse me, and as you'll know, that you have to be there for the whole item in order to take part in any decision. So it's just to avoid any sort of grounds for appeal or any suggestion that a member might not have been there for the whole period. So that's the reasoning behind it.
No, thanks for that. Thanks for that clarity. I do appreciate that. I think it's the right thing to do. My comment was going to be that I had raised it previously with Mr. Bell in regard to having cameras on at meetings, etc., to prove members' attendance, and he had said there was no requirement at the licensing board to do so, as the rule around complete attendance and being in the room the whole time isn't actually in the legislation, I think.
Well, as I said, it's probably not specifically stated, but as I said, it can give grounds for appeal, and this is just to, it's almost belt and braces, I guess, but it's not mandatory legally, but it's something that I think is, in terms of good practice, I think it makes sense, as you say. So
no objection. I've just clarify that. Thank you.
Okay, members. So with that, as I say, can members switch on their cameras, and those who are not members can switch them off, apart from Mr. Munro because he's speaking.
Thank you, convener. So quick roll call. Convener.
Here.
Councillor McClellan.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Dunbar.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Grant.
Here.
Thank you. And we've had apologies from Councillor Settler.
Thank you very much, Mr. Munro. Okay, if we could move on to the business for today. The first item is the minutes of the meeting of the 8th of December. They can be found on pages 5 to 8. The minutes there for approval. Can we agree them, please? Okay, I'm not
Agreed.
consent. Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Item 2 is the minutes of the review hearing on the 7th of January. Again, they're on pages 9 to 10. Again, the minutes there for approval. Can we agree?
Agreed.
Thank you. Now moving on to the list of applications. The first item is at 3.1, which is an application for a premises license for Amondi, 15 Chapel Street. You will note there was a slight error on the information sheet in terms of the address. It's in Move to Beach Boulevard. I think that was a slight error with cut and paste. So I'll just hand over to Mr. Monroe.
Yeah, thank you, convener. Yeah, my apologies for the typo on the information sheet. The premises is at Chapel Street, not Beach Boulevard. It's a premises license for a licensed coffee shop. As you'll see, everything is within policy. There have been no representations or objections to this one. The applicant has agreed to the usual drugs policy condition. My understanding is there might be somebody here from the applicant, is that right?
Yes, my name's Suzanne Horm. I'm one of the owners at Almondine.
So Suzanne's obviously here if members do have any questions, but as I said, there are no representations and everything is within policy. Sorry, convener, you're still on mute.
I know. You press that button and you never know if it's coming off or not. I was just to say, welcome, Suzanne. I don't know if you want to say anything about the application or if you just want to take any questions that may come.
I just had one question actually, just with regards to the radio link that we've asked to join in Aberdeen as part of one of the conditions of our licence.
Okay. Well, it was actually we were going to give you questions, but perhaps Mr. Monroe,
Okay.
yeah, could you answer Ms. Horn's question?
Well, that excuse me, that's normally a standard question, but it's normally for door staff, etc. I believe. I'm just getting a message from Arlene to see that was actually asked for an error. So yeah, it's not the kind of premises that condition's normally attached to. So I don't think that would be required.
No problem.
It won't be buns at Dawn's or pastries at Dawn. Members, has anybody got any questions for Ms. Horn? No, not seeing any hands. Okay, members, as we've heard, it's all within policy. Are we happy to agree the premises license? Agreed. Again, Mr. Monroe, could I just ask you to do a quick round just get everybody to confirm so that we've got it recorded for the minute.
Yeah, of course. So convener.
Agreed.
Yeah, Councillor McClellan.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Dunbar. Sorry, Councillor, you're on mute.
Agreed. Sorry.
Thank you. And Councillor Grant.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 3.2, which is an application for the provisional premises license at 21 Crown Street. Handing over to you, Mr. Monroe.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's Crown Terrace, not Crown Street, but that's by.
You're quite right.
Yes. This is a provisional premises license for a restaurant premises, I believe, at 21 Crown Terrace. The police had a representation regarding the adult entertainment. My understanding is that a condition has been agreed between the applicant and the police in that regard, but I'll let them obviously clarify that to the board themselves. I believe Mr. McDonald is representing the applicant.
Good morning, Your Honours. Yes, I am.
Good morning, Mr. McDonald, and welcome to the board. Can I just check, Sergeant Flett, has the police's representation been withdrawn following an agreement?
Yes, that was done yesterday. Thank you.
Okay, Excellent. Mr. MacDonald, as I say, welcome to the board. If you'd like to address your application.
Thank you, Your Honours. Yes. These premises at 21 Crown Terrace, I believe that in the past they were called Prime Cut. I think that maybe that was the most recent name for them, but they did have a licence. I'm not entirely clear why the licence was lost. It may have been for I think the premises, the tenant left, it may have been for non-payment of the annual fee, or the premises were closed for a length of time and the licence was revoked in terms of your policy. So this is to reinstate a licence for premises that have been licensed in the past. I believe, I'm not sure, but I think one of our client's directors, Mr. Ali, may be online as well. So if there's anything in particular from an operational point of view that you wish to know, he will hopefully be on hand to assist. They are restaurant premises, Your Honours, but as you will see from the application and obviously the reference that you've just heard to entertainment, it does provide for entertainment at functions, for instance, as well. We have agreed a condition that certainly adult entertainment, for instance, would only be at a private pre-booked function. No children on the premises at that stage. And I understand that adult entertainment is something that you wish to condition, etc. So I hope that what is in front of you now is acceptable. You've heard from the police that it's acceptable to them. I'll maybe just leave it there, Your Honours, because it may be more appropriate for you to ask me or my client any questions. But that is basically it. It is reinstating a licence that was there already. My clients have taken on the lease recently, and when permitted, would hope to be able to open and operate as envisaged. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. MacDonald. Is Councillor Cameron, I noticed your hand first.
Thank you, convener. I may well have got this wrong because we haven't had a licensing board for so long. So I've got a supplementary if my first question's correct. I noticed that on page 35 on Friday and Saturday evenings, we're looking at 16 consecutive hours. I thought our policy was 15, but I may well be wrong.
No, you're right, Councillor Cameron.
Okay, so on that basis, 16 hours is beyond policy, but probably additional to that, question 4, the applicant is asking to take advantage of general extensions. So if we granted the 16 hours, they wouldn't be able to take advantage of the general extensions. Is that correct?
Mr. Munro, do you want to just clarify for Councillor Cameron rather than me answering these questions?
Yes, Councillor, in terms of the board's policy, that's right. Any general extensions can only be enjoyed by premises whose standard hours conform to the policy of no more than 15. That's right.
Councillor Cameron?
That's fine. So currently the applicant is asking for something that is outside of our policy. Does the agent want to say anything about
that? Mr. MacDonald?
Noted, Your Honours, and I would be happy to amend the application to comply with your policy. So on Friday and Saturday, we would start the licensed hours an hour later. So instead of 11, it would be 12. And that would bring it into 15 hours. And I take the point about seasonal variations as well, so we will withdraw the seasonal variations request.
Hello?
Hello? Hello? Is that?
Hello?
Hello, yes, I can hear someone. But...
Yeah, sorry, it's Mohammed here. Yeah, that's fine. Just an hour later will be fine if we can't do 16 hours. We can just open an hour later on the weekend.
Are you content, Councillor Cameron?
I am. Just for clarity, Mr. Hunter saying move it to
Mr. MacDonald.
Sorry, Mr. MacDonald. Mr. Hunter appeared on the screen. Apologises to you, Mr. MacDonald. Move the opening time to 12, which then takes it back to 15 hours, And I think you also said you would withdraw the request to take advantage of general extensions. Is that correct? It's just for clarity.
If I can maybe just clarify there, if the hours are moved back to 15, you would be entitled to use the general extensions if they so wished. Just for clarity to the agent there.
Yeah, no. I appreciate that. I just wanted clarity in what we were potentially maybe agreeing to.
Yeah. So, Mr. McDonald, I'm assuming you, given that you've taken back an hour to 15 hours, you will want to take advantage of the general extensions that go with it.
I would like to just take advantage of your full policy, Your Honours. So yes, I will certainly take away the hour at the start on Friday and Saturday, and if the seasonal variations are still within policy, I would leave that in. I'd picked it up that it wasn't, but if it is, I'll leave it in.
Okay, thank you.
I'm happy with that.
Okay. Any further questions from anyone? No. Okay, with that, changes to comply with policy of 15 hours, can we approve the provisional premises license? Mr. Munro, can you just do a quick roll call?
Yeah, no problem. And just to confirm that will be with the additional condition regarding the adult entertainment that has been agreed with Police Scotland. So, convener.
Agreed with the changes. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor McClellan.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Dunbar.
Agreed.
Thank you, and Councillor Grant.
Agreed.
Thank you. So that is approved as amended with, as said, the additional condition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Munro. Moving on to item 3.3, which is the application for provisional premises licence for Aldi's in Countess Wells Road, Aberdeen. It's on pages 49 to 70 of your pack. Mr. Munro.
Thank you, convener. Yes, obviously application for a provisional premises licence for a supermarket premises. The usual conditions regarding delivery driver training and CCTV have been agreed. There are no outstanding representations. I believe Mr. McDougall is possibly representing the applicant today.
I am, Mr. Munro. I'm in attendance today, Your Honours, along with Philip Johnson, who's the property director responsible for the East Coast of Scotland for Aldi.
Mr. McDougall, would you like to say anything on the application?
Yes, convener. I'll make a few brief remarks, perhaps, if that's useful.
Yes, please.
I'm sure Your Honours will be familiar with Aldi as a retailer. They're award-winning and very successful, and they have 2 existing stores in Your Honours' jurisdiction. And they do have an alcohol range. That's why we're here today. It's an essential part of the business, albeit it's very much ancillary to the overall offer. I would suggest that this ancillary nature of alcohol display can be seen when you look at the context of what we're asking for. That's 32.79 square metres. So it's not a case of multiple aisles of alcohol. Instead, it's very much a display that complements overall grocery offer, so that Aldi customers can, if you like, complete a full shop. And in brief terms, the site itself, if Your Honours are familiar, it's opposite the Robert Gordon's College playing fields on Countess Wells Road. Aldi chose this site because they felt there was a gap in the market for a food retailer. I'd suggest that the closest shopping destination for a full shop, if you like, is probably the Asda and Sainsbury's at the Bridge of Dee. So this new store will serve the demand of the local area and probably quite a bit of the west side of Aberdeen as well. There will also be investment in the site to open the site up to pedestrians, so the creation of footpaths, etc., just to help that happen. And as Your Honours will know better than me, there's a number of new housing developments being constructed around the local area. So I think that's really important as well. So there'll be additional infrastructure in place to support the new residents. And it's a case of hopefully Aldi will bring choice and convenience to the local area. The creation of a new store will also bring a number of positives. For example, you have the investment of around £3.9 million in the local area, with the construction of a store, and also the creation of 35 new well-paid jobs. Those will be advertised through local press, etc. So will be jobs for local people. And what's important here, and Your Honours will probably be aware, Aldi are accredited living wage employers. They also have a second to none training scheme as well as a graduate scheme as well, which is highly regarded. In terms of Aldi's due diligence, which is important, they're an experienced licence holder with thorough and robust policies and procedures in place to make sure that the licence objectives are complied with. To the best of my knowledge, the current 2 stores in Aberdeen don't cause police licence standards any problems, and the conditions, as Mr Munro narrated, are agreed to in relation to home deliveries and CCTV. There's no fewer than 32 CCTV cameras throughout the store. There's security guards on a risk-assessed basis, robust staff training, and electronic till systems where the cashier is automatically prompted to challenge for ID when an alcohol product's scanned. And key members of management will, of course, have personal licences. This is the final piece of the jigsaw in bringing this new store to Aberdeen. I submit the application will be, and the store will be a welcome addition to the local area. I commend the application and I'm happy to take any questions, Your Honours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr McDougall. Any questions for Mr McDougall? I'm not seeing any hands. Double check. I don't see any hands. So with that, members, can I just get us to go to the vote to approve the provisional licence at Aldi's on Countess Wells Road? Mr Munro.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. So yes, it's for a provisional premises licence with the additional conditions as discussed. Convener?
Agreed, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor McClellan?
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend?
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie?
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron?
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg?
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Dunbar?
Agreed.
And Councillor Grant?
Agreed.
Thank you. So that's the provisional premises licence granted with the additional conditions as discussed.
I'm obliged, Your Honours. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 3.4, which is the application for provisional premises licence at 785 Great Northern Road, Aberdeen, pages 71 to 88. Mr Munro. Oh, Councillor McClellan. Sorry.
Hi, Convener. I mean, at the start you gave us an instruction and I'm not sure it's been followed by all members, so could we just look at that and can continue? I won't mention names.
Yeah. Members, I did request, if possible, that you could put your cameras on so that we have got your faces on the screen.
Convener, I had to move rooms, but I was on camera, maybe not fully. I'm just in another room now.
I wasn't Gordon, I was up as well.
That's fine. Councillor, I've got Councillor Mackenzie. I'm looking for, there's a couple of people. Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Gregg.
I've got Councillor Gregg on my screen.
I'm on camera.
All right, that's fine. I've got up a list of names. That's why I'm probably not seeing everyone. Right. And do you see Councillor Dunbar? I've lost Councillor Dunbar.
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. Is that us all there with you?
I think Councillor Grant's got his hand up. Or
Councillor Grant.
Yeah, it's just to say that when the camera is on, my home internet connection is a little bit shaky this week, which has been endlessly frustrating. So yeah, I mean the camera's on, but if it compromises the connection, I might have to intervene and withdraw from the meeting.
Okay. Thanks for that, Councillor Grant. I know that there has been some technical problems with the system the last sort of 10 days. I've been getting kicked out of meetings quite regularly, so we'll try it. So we're all on now, so we'll move forward. As I say, we're on to 785 Great Northern Road. Back to Mr.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. So this is an application for provisional premises licence for Gordon Service Station. Again, there have been no reps. There is a a slight typo with the application. You'll be pleased to know that the capacity is supposed to be 12.1 square metres and not 1,231 square metres. So my apologies for that. That was just to check you were all paying attention. As you know, it's a garage, so they are excluded premises. So obviously the test remains as before, whether persons resident in the locality are or are likely to become reliant to a significant extent on the premises as a principal source of fuel or groceries. And Mr. Hunter has provided the research documentation which has been circulated amongst you.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Hunter. Nice to see you again.
Good morning, Your Honours. Hopefully you can see and hear me. Probably I should start with apologies to Councillor Cameron for appearing on his screen earlier on. I was sharing Councillor Grant's problems with connection, so I changed machines and probably interrupted Councillor Cameron's flow, so apologies for that earlier on. I'm accompanied this morning by Lee Black, who is the area manager for motor fuels. He is on the list at the bottom as LB. I suspect it'll just be as easy for Mr. Black to keep his camera off to order, unless, of course, members have any questions for him. You've heard from me about petrol stations before, but that's what just in relation to this particular application. It's Motor Fuel Limited. You approved the application for Bridge of Dawn service station at your December meeting. Motor Fuel also operate premises at Dyes, King Street, and very close to this one at North Anderson Drive, all of which are licensed. The standard CCD convention as proposed is agreeable. What's proposed here is a small alcohol display, not 1,000 square metres as perhaps suggested, as part of the Londis convenience range, which the store now operates with following a change of ownership and an upgrade. It operates on a 24-hour basis, but it has a night pay windows through certain hours of the night. As I say, it's the nearest other premises to offering petrol filling stations are in fact the operator's own premises at North Anderson Drive, but I understand because of the way the road is laid out with dualling and so on, that the two premises very much have their own customer base because it's quite inconvenient to drive from one to the other because of the dualling. Now, normally in these applications, I take you through the market research, much to your delight. I think with this one, I'll have to be brutally upfront and say that if you read it through, actually the ultimate reliance numbers at the end are very low. But I suppose that gives some credibility to my submissions in the past that we submit these reports to you undoctored, as it were. And I have to say that this one is not as broadly supportive as others would have been in the past. Having said that, I think there is a piece of information in it which I think is very relevant to the reliance test, and which, taken with the supporting statement from the manager of the premises, or rather the operator who's responsible for both this site and North Anderson Drive, is that when he talks about his experience, and you should have that in your papers, is actually the number of times a week that customers go to these premises. And if it's in the market research, because although the number of ultimate people who go through the statutory test say, well, there's only one person at the end that says I'm actually reliant. I think to be fair to the market research, I think if you bear with me, just closed out on my screen there, the joys of working from home, that it's on page. And if you get different numbers, I apologise, but the market research has got its own page numbers. So if you go to page 7, I think it is, of the market research, you'll see there that of the 86 local residents who were interviewed, you'll see there's information they give about the average visits per week. And in terms of customers going there for grocery purposes, whether that might be 4.15 visits per week to one premises, I actually think does demonstrate that individuals are reliant to a significant extent. The necessary reasons notwithstanding what they go on to answer in the remainder of the questionnaire, I can't think of any premises which I go to before or after lockdown on a 4 times per week basis. So whilst the customers do go on to demonstrate that, they say their alternatives and so on later in the questionnaire, I would say that on a reasonable basis, somebody using premises 4 times or over 4 times per week demonstrates the level of necessary reliance to satisfy the statutory test, taken with the statement from the manager, such as obviously it's prepared by the applicant, so it's attach a different weight to that perhaps, but he certainly gives his own view on the merits of the application. There's no doubt they'll be well run because they'll be consistent with the operator more generally. As I say, I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have. It's a slightly unusual one because of the outcomes of the research, but I nevertheless submit there is sufficient credibility in there for you to be satisfied that the application can be granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hunter. Members, questions for Mr. Hunter? I'm not seeing any hands. Just double check my list on the side. No, not seeing anybody indicating. So, okay, we have, thank you very much, Mr. Hunter. And I think, as you said, it gives credibility the fact that the information provided is undoctored, and we have seen other applications that have come forward with greater dependency on petrol stations for a main source of groceries, etc. So I think, as you've related to the legislation, if one person is dependent on it, it is allowable, if you like, to approve it. Members, I'll suggest that we do grant the provisional premises license, the Gordon Service Station on Great Northern Road. I'll ask Mr. Munro just to go to the roll call, please, Mr. Munro.
Thank you, convener. Yep. So the motion is obviously to grant the provisional premises license with the usual conditions attached. So, convener.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor McClellan.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Agreed, and Mr. Hunter didn't need to apologise. That was all my fault. If I'd been paying attention, I would have known it was Mr. McDonald that had been speaking.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Dunbar.
Agreed.
Thank you, and Councillor Grant.
Agreed.
Thank you. So the provisional premises licence is granted.
Thank you, Your Honours, and I'm just grateful that Councillor Cameron didn't recoil in horror when my face popped up on the screen. But thank you for your time this morning, and I'll wish you all the best. I'll see you again, no doubt, sometime soon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hunter. Okay, moving on to item 3.5, which is an application for the provisional premises licence for Unit 3, 9 Beach Esplanade, Aberdeen, on pages 89 to 106. Mr. Munro.
Thank you, convener. This is an application for a provisional premises licence for a restaurant premises, and this one is at Beach Boulevard, not Chapel Street. The summary of the activities is obviously in your papers. The usual outdoor conditions and the conditions on the drugs policy have been agreed. The operating plan was amended slightly following LSO comments, and there are no outstanding representations at the moment. I believe Mr. Dawson is here for the applicant.
Yes, morning, convener, Your Honours. I am indeed here, and I think that one of the director shareholders, Sonny Batty, may well be here as well. But I don't think it really matters, to be honest, because your information sheet says it all really a provisional premises licence. I think you'll know where it's located. It's in a completely rebuilt building overlooking the beach esplanade and the North Sea ultimately. It's going to be a grill steakhouse, also not only steaks but burgers and pizzas. It's quite large, as you'll see from your papers. It's got a capacity of 144. It's all seated, table and chairs, no standing. And on the plan, Laws, you'll see there's a glazed outside area to the front, which will be good news for patrons on a day like this. The fit out, Your Honours, has been started, and my client hopes to be finished by the end of March. It'll employ about 20 full and part-time staff, and the cost of the fit out will be about £300,000. So it's quite a big undertaking for them. But I would submit it's a welcome addition to the eateries at the beach. These are experienced operators. They operate restaurants and convenience stores in Aberdeen and have business interests in Dubai as well. As Sandy said, there's no concerns raised. It's hoped to be open, if it's closed in March, by April, so it's on the way. And in my opinion, it demonstrates a welcome leap of faith in some such uncertain times. Happy to take any questions, but otherwise there's no issues being raised. I simply move the grant to the application.
Thank you, Mr. Dawson, and welcome as always. Questions for Mr. Dawson? Again, I'm not seeing any hands. No. Okay. With that, then, thank you for attending, Mr. Dawson. I will just move to the vote. Mr. Munro, I'll be moving that we grant the provisional application.
Thank you, convener. So, yeah, so it's a grant of a provisional premises licence with the agreed conditions as stated. Councillor Bolton.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor McClellan.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Dunbar.
Agreed.
And thank you, and Councillor Grant.
Agreed.
Thank you. So the provisional premises licence is granted with those conditions as stated.
Very much, Mr. Munro. And I think, Mr. Dawson, you're staying with us for the next one, which is 3.6, application for the variation of the premises licence for the Sandman Signature Hotel.
Yes,
Mr.
hopefully very briefly. I think there are no issues. It's simply to licence the spa with a small gym on the top floor. Your officials, as ever, have been very helpful in sorting this out, because I only got involved in it last week and there was a lot of stuff to do. So thank you to all of them. I don't think there's anything else I need to say. You'll know the hotel, large hotel. It's obviously closed at the moment, but this is the last part. We just licensed phase 2 of the bedrooms, so it's complete now for bedrooms. Everything else is finished, and this was the last part of it. So it's a spa on the second floor and a small gym.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Dawson. Mr. Munro, I didn't let you have, is there anything you want to add before we?
No, I'm quite happy to let Tony speak. That's absolutely fine. Yeah, as I said, it's just the addition to that area with a slight amendment to children and young persons access as a result. Again, as Tony indicated, their amendments were made to the operating plan after the LSO comments, and there are no representations outstanding.
Thank you very much, Mr. Munro. Any questions for Mr. Dawson? Not seeing any hands. Okay, again, I'll move the approval of the variation for the premises licence. Mr. Munro, can you go to the vote, please?
No problem. Yeah. So again, as we've said, it's just to grant the major variation of the licence. Convener.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor McClellan.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Agreed. I did a double take when I looked at this description. I thought that this was going to be a treatment area for the Scottish Police Authority.
Oh, dear.
Councillor Gregg.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Dunbar.
Agreed.
Thank you, and Councillor Grant.
Agreed.
Thank you. So the variation is granted.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dawson.
Thank you, convener, and goodbye, and stay safe.
You too. Thank you. Okay, a slight change on item 4. We've got the Gambling Act 2005, an application for a bingo premises licence at 181A Union Street. It's on pages 123 to 142. Mr. Munro.
Thank you, convener. Yeah, we don't get many of these. So that this is an application for our bingo premises license, as you said, under the Gambling Act. Again, the consultation process is slightly different with the gambling ones, but again, there have been no representations made. I believe Audrey Junior is with us to represent the applicant.
I am. Good morning, everyone. It's lovely to be appearing before you again, albeit remotely. Yes, as Sandy says, Arlene had indicated that there's no representation, so attendance wasn't necessarily required. But as this is a gambling one, I thought it may be worthwhile just attending in case you had any specific questions about the site at all. It's a high street bingo premises licence that we are seeking consent for today. It's a fairly kind of small store. It's not like the sort of out of town bingo premises that you might be familiar with. As I say, it's high street. There haven't been any representations at all. I submitted a couple of documents with the application just for your information about the applicant and about the various measures that they have in place at their sites, just as kind of supporting evidence. So there was a operational standards document which sets out how they comply with the licensing objectives, and of course that's the licensing objectives of the Gambling Act, and a working together document as well, which you may have had an opportunity to look at. But as I say, there's no representations. I would commend the applicant and the application to you, but I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Junior. Questions from Ms. Junior? Again, I'm not seeing any hands. Just do a double check. No. Okay. Again, we'll move forward to with the application for the bingo premises license. Could we just go to the vote, Mr. Munro?
Yeah, no problem, convener. Thank you. So that'll be the grant of the bingo premises license with the usual mandatory conditions attached to it. So convener.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor McClellan.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Dunbar.
Agreed.
Thank you, and Councillor Grant.
Agreed.
Thank you. So the application is granted with the usual conditions attached.
Right, thank you. Hopefully see you in person again soon at some point.
I hope so. Take care. Thank you for coming.
Bye-bye.
Okay, right, members, I don't know if you want to just take 5 minutes to comfort break, and if we're back here, say for 11:20, and then we'll get on to the list of review hearings. So see you at 20:20. Stick your mics and your cameras off while you do it. Thanks. Okay, that's us all back, I think. Just on a little play, trying to get my camera. I'm not looking down. Okay, if you're back, if you, members, if you could just switch on your cameras, so I know you're here. Oh, Councillor Bragg, Councillor Townsend, Councillor Mackenzie. Guys are cameras. Mr. Monroe, you'll have to let me know who you can see because I can only see so many faces. I can see Councillor Townsend, Mackenzie, Cameron, Greg. So I've just
Councillor
got,
Bolton, if you use the large gallery preview, if you press the 3 buttons,
okay,
and then select large gallery preview, you should be able to see more people that way.
Perfect. Wait a minute, I need to get rid of the chat. That's done there. Let's see if I can get rid of. No, I hate to say this. There's just even more of you. There's not more of you. You're just bigger. Let me try it. Try the same one. Try that. I don't know. I'll just rely on Arlene and Sandy telling me there's somebody not there because I can't get any more on even using the large. I just get bigger pictures of them. Okay, are we all back? Can you see Mr. Monroe? Councillor Dunbar.
Councillor Grant saying that he's having connection issues, you know, in terms of rejoining.
Okay. Appreciate we can't get back in. Okay. Just all right. I'll just give it another minute and see if Councillor Grant joins us. If not, we'll just crack on. I know it's a long agenda. Mr. Monroe, could I maybe just give you, ask you to give the board just a little bit of a steer in terms of what their options are under the annual fee payments reviews?
Yeah, no problem. Obviously, this is the review or these items 5.1 down to 5.27 are the review hearings in respect of non-payment of the annual fees, which is a mandatory condition. So it's basically on the grounds of a breach of condition in the licence. There are a few that we'll come to that have either paid or surrendered the licence, so those won't need to be considered this morning. Basically, as you'll know, a review hearing, the purpose of which is to rectify any defect. So if the fee is paid, then there's no need to proceed with the review hearing. So we'll take those ones off that have paid or indeed surrendered the licence, because obviously there's no point. In terms of the options available to the board in a review hearing, if you decide that action requires to be taken, then your options are a written warning to the licence holder, a variation of the licence, a suspension of the licence, excuse me, for such period as the board may determine, or a revocation of the licence. Some of the premises that we'll come to, we think are closed. Others we just have had no a response at all from the licence holder. We have used every means of contact that we could think of, from email to social media and what have you. And as I said, these are the ones that are remain outstanding that we have heard nothing from. Now, obviously, the board did provide a discount. I think they're all on sales premises. The board did provide the discount in the annual fee, and obviously the vast majority of premises have paid them. I see there's a couple of hands up, so I'll stop at the moment.
Thanks very much, Mr. Monroe. Councillor DeMar, your hand was up. Is that a legacy hand? Yeah, thank you. I had Councillor Townsend and then Councillor Cameron.
Yeah, I noticed with one or two of the premises, one of them's demolished, one of them's been closed for quite a while, and the question I have is, if they're going to demolish a premises or close it, is it fall upon them to notify, and thereby, if they notify closure or no longer in business, that take away the requirement to pay the fee, obviously, but it falls upon them to notify us. Is that right?
Mr. Monroe?
I mean, generally, yes. I mean, generally, if the premises is not going to be used for the sale of alcohol anymore, then the licence is surrendered. But in the cases we've got in front of us, that hasn't been done, which is why technically the licence is still in effect and the fee hasn't been paid. So that's why they're before you.
Yeah. Councillor Cameron?
Thank you, Convener. It's probably a kind of continue on from that. We're currently in a situation where no licensed premises are open, and we don't know how long that's likely to continue. On the grounds of that, some of the premises whose intention at the moment may well be to reopen, and therefore we would be dealing with them in a similar manner to how we would deal with them in normal times, might actually get to the stage where they don't reopen because their business becomes non-viable. I suppose I'm answering my own question. Presumably the law doesn't take circumstances like this into account.
I think you have answered your own question.
I suppose I was really just thinking in terms of fairness and equity because of the circumstances, but yeah, I've answered my own question. Yeah. I should have thought it through before I opened my mouth, Sandy. Thank you.
No, it's fair enough, but obviously in terms of fairness and equity, there's two sides to that as well, because there will be other premises in the same boat that have paid their licence fee, so it works both ways in that regard, I guess.
Yeah, Councillor Cameron, I'm sure we were all thinking what you asked, so please, it's better if somebody articulates it. Okay, well, we'll just move on, and what we'll do, rather than, we'll just take them line by line, because otherwise we'll be dotting all over the place. So if we move, first of all, to 5.1, Mr. Monroe.
Sorry, Convener, Councillor McClellan's got his hand up, maybe you can't see.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor McClellan, sorry.
No problem, thanks, Convener. It was just on the back of what Councillor Cameron had said, and in the sort of spirit of that. Obviously, there is ones that have closed down, etc., which could be dealt with today, but in other instances, would it be an option for us, perhaps Mr. Monroe could indicate whether we can defer the decision till the next meeting, which I assume would be in March, where there be a better understanding of when places are going to open. Obviously, the money would still be due, etc.
Mr. Monroe?
Apologies. Yeah. I mean, deferral is always an option for you if you feel the circumstances warrant it. Again, we have to be careful because again, it's due by the 1st of October, and it could be argued that you're giving these premises longer to pay than others who were struggling as well but have still paid. So again, that works both ways, and I guess it's one of those that there is no right answer to that. That's something that the board will have to weigh up when coming to that kind of decision.
And we did actually defer this from the December licensing board to this one to allow further attempts to get payment in, and I would just like to put on record at this point the amazing job that the licensing team and the LSOs have done to get from, I think it was 70 plus in December down to the low numbers that we've got today. So again, thank you, because it's not been an easy task given that a lot of people are in lockdown, including officers working from home, so normal access for them has been quite tight. So I'd just like to thank you on behalf of the board for all your efforts. It's really appreciated. So as I say, we'll just go through each application, and Mr. Monroe will give us as much information as he can on each. Mr. Monroe, 5.1, our dice tandoori.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. So all of these are breach of condition 10, as you'll see in the review proposals, which is payment of the annual fee. The amount payable for Dice Tandoori, the discounted amount was £187. You'll see that reminders have been sent out to the addresses that we have for the license holder. This is one where we just had absolutely no response at all from the license holder, neither ourselves nor the LSO. Obviously, all of these have the LSO reports attached. So I think Diane's here if you have any questions in that regard as well.
Does anybody want to ask a question at this stage? I'll just ask Mrs. Sandy. Is there anything you'd like to add, Mrs. Sandy, to what Mr. Munro's already said?
Good morning, everybody. No, basically, emails were sent out to all the outstanding premises in October, and there was an update in January from Arlene in the licensing section. The majority of them, we've not received any contact or queries. If we did so, we would pass them on to licensing for liaison about matching up payments, etc.
Okay, thanks very much, Mrs. Sandy. I've got, is that Avril? Your hand up.
Yeah, I don't have a question, it's a comment. I pass there almost every day, and in the evenings I have seen lights on the facilities, so they're obviously coming and going from time to time.
Okay. Thanks very much, Councillor Mackenzie. Well, we have before us, obviously, there's been attempts to make contact on several occasions. They know when their licence is due. And again, I think we have to balance up what we heard from Mr. Munro. There is hundreds that have actually paid who are in a similar position, I'm sure. One of the suggestions I'd like to put to the board would be that we could suspend their licence, the remaining portion, until such times as they pay the licence fee. That way, I think it's fair that those who have paid get to use it, and those who haven't, we're not actually revoking it, but we're putting it in, if you like, into a suspended state until they actually pay their fees. Councillor Cameron. Oh, sorry, Mr. Munro, were you going to say something there before I take
Well, maybe Mr. Munro is going to answer the question I was about to ask.
I would just, I think if we're going to be suspending a license, it needs to really be for a set period of time rather than until they pay the license. An option along the lines of what you're suggesting is the board can vary the license so that there are 0 licensed hours, which means obviously they cannot use the license to sell alcohol until such times as they vary the license back, and obviously that can be done once the annual fee is paid. Again, there's the suggestion that obviously you're giving that premises longer to pay, so that's again something the board have to weigh up. But if you're looking at an indefinite period, then I would suggest the variation is possibly the way to go rather than suspension, because I think if you're going to suspend a license, it should be for in terms of clarity, it should be for a set period of time so that it's clear what how long the suspension's for.
That's helpful, Mr. Munro. Before I take Councillor Cameron, can I just ask as well, in terms of work for the licensing team, if we vary, and then they've obviously got to apply back. Can you just outline that? It's just again so that members are aware.
Yeah, I mean, if we vary the license, then we would prepare an amended operating plan showing 0 licensed hours, obviously. That would be sent out to the license holder, but given that we're not having any response from the correspondence we've sent to date, I guess it's questionable as to whether that would reach there. We might have to utilise the LSOs to, if Councillor Mackenzie says there's sometimes activity at the premises, obviously when we're in a time when we're allowed out, if you like, they can maybe attend the premises and liaise sort of face to face almost. So that would be an option. If they then paid, then they could, as I said, apply to reinstate the licensed hours that they had, and we could. I mean, you can set the variation for a such period, but again, that would, I think, need to be a set length of time rather than until you've paid the annual fee.
Okay, that's really helpful, Mr. Munro. Councillor Cameron, you were first.
I don't think I need to say anything now. It was I did think that I had thought about your idea of suspension, but I remember in the past it having to be for a fixed time that had to be determined. And the variation sounds a really good idea, but again, I think Mr. Monroe's final comments there about leaving it open until they pay for the license seems maybe not something we can do. So I'll let Councillor Townsend in now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Yeah, it's just, I wondered, before we take any decisions on any of these premises, are we really having to make some effort to see if they actually exist? Now, Councillor Mackenzie knows this premises exists, and that's helpful, but there are a couple in this list, one specifically that's been demolished. So to take a decision about removing this or doing that when the premises no longer actually existed, it's off, it's rubble. I just wondered how much effort or ability staff have got to even do a drive past or any form of checking that the premise physically still exists. If that makes sense.
I mean, what I was suggesting, we would just take it each individual one on its merits, rather than, because I know the one you're referring to, and I've driven past and know it's definitely in ruins, so it certainly won't be having a license. So if I've taken Councillor Dunbar, and then I can always ask Mr. Monroe for further comment.
Can I just come back there? It was helpful what Councillor Mackenzie said, and I think we would all have personal knowledge around the city of some that don't exist. I just wondered if that would be helpful at the start of each one. We just give our knowledge, if nothing else.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Townsend. Councillor Dunbar.
I just wondered if Mr. Monroe could give us a little bit more information with regard to the kind of written warning option. In terms of what is it we're saying in a warning that, that it's really about that I'd like to know.
A written warning is exactly that. It's a warning. I would say it's possibly less relevant for this type of thing because, as I said, a review hearing is intended to rectify a defect. So I would guess a written warnings is more in place or more appropriate where there's maybe been an incident that's been a breach of the licensing objectives, and the license holder has provided evidence to show that they've taken steps to put procedures in place so that doesn't happen again. So that's been covered. So the written warning is appropriate then to say, okay, that shouldn't have happened, but we appreciate that you've now taken steps. So it's on record that you've had a warning over that. Don't let it happen again, type thing. So that if it then does, then obviously then the sanctions may be greater the next time round. Where this one, it's a fairly black and white breach of condition. It's literally non-payment of a fee that's due. I don't know what purpose a warning would serve, to be honest, because the fee would still be outstanding and the matter wouldn't be rectified.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Dunbar. Board, obviously, we've heard from Councillor Townsend. Mr. Monroe, can you maybe just give a comment? Because again, Councillor Townsend, we've heard from Councillor Mackenzie, she knew there has been people coming and going for the duty. So that almost begs the question, why haven't they responded to any of our contacts? But I don't know, how do you feel about, or what's the legal implications of taking sort of local knowledge as opposed to information from yourselves or the LSOs?
Yeah, if it's evidence, you know what I mean. It's up for the board as to how much weight they put on that. Obviously, if what I would say is if elected members had said, oh, I think this, and there is other evidence from other places, like factual documentary evidence, then obviously I think that would take precedence. But you're right in terms of each one of these needs to be determined on its own merits. Now, in terms of going past places, as I said, we normally would rely on the LSOs for that, but in the current climate, that's been very difficult. They're obviously not out and about, so and it's the $1 million question: is it when's that going to be possible again? That I don't know if Dan or Andrew can give any indication as to if they've had any discussions on that score, but if there are ones, I'd say it wouldn't be unreasonable if there are ones where you think they might still be operating and there is just communication issues, then that might be grounds to defer that one to see if there's any further investigation. But by the same token, you're right in terms of this was due in October, and we brought the update in December, and we've been trying to get in touch until now, and we're now obviously in February. So again, I'm kind of avoiding the question, but I guess that's the things that yourselves have to weigh up when coming to a decision on this.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Munro. Councillor McClellan.
Thanks, convener. Yeah, I mean that's sort of what I was thinking in that regard. There may be communication errors. There may be issues in that. I appreciate the fees were meant to be paid in October, and businesses have had a long time, and others have paid. But I'm perhaps being too nice in that I'm minded, I think, to defer to the next meeting where we can make a final decision, just to give businesses that one final chance, where hopefully the current climate will have changed as well, and folk will be back in their premises and perhaps operating at a minimal stage. But I wouldn't want to take anyone's license away today unless we know the business has shut down, and as Gordon said. So I think I would be happy to move the deferral on this one.
Councillor Cameron.
If I can just before Councillor Cameron comes in, Arlene just provided me with an update for this one. We've sent correspondence to 2 different email addresses that we held and contacted them through their Facebook post, their social media. So that's the steps that we've taken for this one. The difficulty we have is obviously we don't have anybody in the office, so sending postal letters is very difficult at the moment. So our other options are pretty limited at the moment, to be perfectly honest.
Okay. Councillor McClellan, does that alter anything you've got to have said?
No, thanks for that. It's helpful to know that information. Given that we're not able to send a letter just now, I do think that would be the final step. So perhaps deferral would allow for a letter to be sent out maybe next month or so ahead of the next meeting. But I think I would like to give them that final chance, and I'll happily do that with any premises who we have a similar situation with, to be honest, because I would be minded to move sort of the same across the board.
Okay, well, if we'll just take them one at a time.
Yeah, no, of course.
Thank you, Councillor McClellan. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, convener. It's really just to get clarity again, because we've been round the houses a wee bit on a variation to 0 hours. I'm very conscious of some comments that have been made that other people have paid and they're not being able to operate because of the restrictions. If the restrictions were to be lifted in a couple of weeks' time, as it stands right now, there's absolutely nothing stopping any of the cases we're looking at today starting to operate again. Yet they haven't paid their fees, excuse me, which were due way back in October. And it's really just to get clarity again, Sandy, in relation to variation to 0 hours. That would mean that they couldn't operate until that was removed. Does there have to be a time limit on the variation, or can the variation be made and left open-ended?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. No, the variation would stand. Basically, the variation, what you would do is you would vary the license, as we've said, to put in 0 hours. What the Act says is where a licensing board has made a variation or suspended the license, but obviously variation, The board may, on the application of the licence holder, and if satisfied that by a reason of a change of circumstances, which obviously in this case would be the payment of the fee, the variation is no longer necessary, revoke the variation or suspension. So basically what they can do is they can apply, if they pay, they can then contact the board, say they've paid and ask for the variation to be revoked. And the board would then take the decision to revoke the variation, which would reinstate the previous hours.
Okay, if I could just maybe have a supplementary in that, convener. So is that something that the clerk has delegated power to do, or would it have to come back to the board to remove the variation?
You're not supposed to ask me difficult questions. I'm just trying to think if that's in our scheme of delegation. Give me 2 seconds and I'll just double check it. It'll obviously depend what the scheme of delegation says.
While Mr. Munro is looking at the scheme of delegation, again, what we need to remember, I just had a quick look at this particular item that we're looking at, the Dice Tandoori. Now they are open from 4 o'clock to 10:30 for deliveries for food. So it's just so that we are aware that that is happening now. Obviously, we're talking about the supply of alcohol, not them stopping them delivering food. So I just feel that if they're delivering food, perhaps they should be paying their license fee. So I think it's just something we need to keep in mind, that they are operating. So I'm not quite sure of their excuse for not being able to look at their Facebook page or their emails, given their both email address.
Maybe the licensing section need to place an order and ask for their money at the same time.
Very good, Councillor Cameron. I'll just wait for Mr. Munro to come back.
While Mr. Munro is looking at this, my logic behind this is, but your statement has now maybe made me change my mind, is that if the clerk has got delegated authority to do this, then on payment of the fee, then the 0 hours variation could be lifted. If it has to come back to the board, then that there's a delay factor. Now, I would have to think, did I really want to go down that route? That was the reason for asking the question.
Yeah, absolutely understand. Councillor Dunbar, that's it. Thanks.
It couldn't be dealt with by the subcommittee.
Well, that's an option. We'll see what the scheme of delegation says, because it could be that Mr. Munro and myself can deal with it. I'm not sure. There's obviously a lot of reading for Mr. Munro.
Yeah, no, I was just checking there to make sure it's not specifically mentioned in the scheme of delegation. So I think it would be competent if the board were so minded to make the decision and specifically delegate the revocation of the variation to officers on payment of the fee as part of the decision. I think that would be perfectly competent.
Okay, is that helpful, Councillor Cameron?
No, that's very helpful. Yeah.
Okay. She's got a little. Okay. Right, folks. So obviously we've got the Dice Tandoori. There's been 2 email addresses attempted to be contacted with no response. They've also contacted them through their Facebook page. We've heard, I'm looking at their online at the moment, they are operating a delivery function. If we were to vary their license to 0 hours, it wouldn't prohibit them from doing home deliveries, but it would stop them doing deliveries of alcohol. My view is that if they're in the premises, there's not a reason that they can't manage to pay their fees. So I would suggest, I'll move that we vary the hours to 0, with the delegation that officers can, on the receipt of payment, reinstate their hours. Is anyone otherwise minded? No. Okay, sorry, Mr. Munro. Sorry, Councillor McClellan. No.
Sorry, I'm pressing buttons. I'm pressing the wrong buttons, I think. Yeah, I'll move deferral to the next committee.
Okay.
Thanks.
Right, all right. Well, we don't need seconders in the board, so we'll just simply, unless anybody's got anything to add or any questions, we'll just move to the vote. I'm not seeing any hands. Mr. Munro? Oh, sorry, sorry, Gordon, were you going to say something?
Just to say that I can see the thinking behind deferral, but I think we've got to be very careful and be more appropriate because people who have paid, I think what you're moving is more appropriate, and I would be backing you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Townsend. Mr. Munro, when you're ready, if we can just go to the vote.
Yeah, thank you, convener. So the motions with yourself to vary the licence as mentioned to 0 hours with a delegation to officers to reinstate the hours upon payment of the annual fee, and the amendment is with Councillor McClellan for deferral of the consideration of the review hearing. Obviously, that's just to make it easier, just ask you to say variation or deferral. That's probably easiest. So convener.
Variation.
Thank you. Councillor McClellan.
Deferral.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Variation.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Variation.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Variation.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg.
Variation.
Thank you. Councillor Dunbar.
Variation.
Thank you. And Councillor Grant.
Variation.
Thank you. So that's 7 for variation and 1 for deferral. So the licence will be varied to 0 hours, and officers will reinstate the hours if payment of the annual fee is received.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rowe. 5.2, again, I'll just get for completeness, Mr. Munro. I know they've been paid, but if you could just confirm that.
Yes, thank you, convener. 5.2 has now been paid, so that one's no longer under consideration.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to 5.3, which is the Express by Holiday Inn in Claymore Drive, Dice. Mr. Munro.
Yeah, thank you. Again, obviously breach of condition 10. The amount payable for this one is £600. Again, reminders have been sent to all addresses or email addresses that we have for the premises. And again, our understanding is that this one has been closed for some time.
Okay. Councillor Mackenzie, have you got any local knowledge? Okay. Members, obviously we've this one again I would just move the fact that it's actually closed and that there's been no contact or response from them by their attempts. Again, I would just vary the licence to 0 hours with the delegation for officers to reinstate once payment received. Anybody otherwise minded? No. Okay. Mr. Munro, again for completeness, can I just get you to go around the table, around the page?
Around the houses, yeah. Almost quite well, virtually, literally. Okay, so obviously, same as before, the variation to 0 hours, and this time obviously there is no amendment. So convener.
Varying.
Thank you. Councillor McClellan.
Agreed. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg.
Agreed.
Councillor Dunbar.
Agreed.
And Councillor Grant.
Agreed.
Thank you. So that one's unanimous that the variation to 0 hours.
Thank you. We're moving to item 5.4, which is the Rowing Tree.
Yes, that one has been paid as well, convener. So that one again is no longer under consideration.
5.5, which is the Brentwood Hotel, 99 Crown Street. Mr.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, another breach of condition 10. Obviously, the amount payable for this one is 467. The usual reminders were sent. We did receive some correspondence on the 13th of January. They were asking for the possibility of a temporary suspension of the licence, or they wanted to temporarily hand back the licence in the current circumstances, and unfortunately we had to advise that we couldn't do that. You either surrender the licence or the fee is due. Unfortunately, that's the position that we're in. when we went back and advised that that wasn't possible, we've not heard anything further. There is a suggestion that this premises and the one at 5.7, as you'll see from the LSO report, that they're now being operated by a separate entity to the licence holder, but we've certainly not received any transfer application or anything like that for either of those two premises.
Okay. Well, again, that you have, excuse me, you have spoken to them on the 13th of January and explained to them that the fee is due. So it's not that they didn't realise. Councillor Cameron, sorry, I'll take you in before I ramble on.
Yeah, some of the local knowledge again. OYO also run the Northern Hotel, but they only run the bedrooms there. And the people who had the Northern Hotel previously operate the bar and the restaurant facility. My understanding with the Brentwood and the Highland, which is the other one, is that, again, they only run the bedrooms, but that they don't offer the other facilities. I don't know if this makes us different from the other ones we're looking at. I'm not giving you an answer. I'm just giving you some information.
It's helpful to have a bit of local knowledge, but I think the fact that they have contacted Mr. Munro and have been made aware that the fee is still due, again, I would just go down, we zero their license to, their hours to zero, and again with the delegation to officers. Anybody otherwise minded? Yep. Mr. Munro.
Thank you. Can I just check, is that for both the Brentwood and the Highland, because they're both in the same boat? So that's 5.5 and 5.7. 5.6 in between has actually paid, so it's not under consideration anymore anyway. So that's fine. We're not complicating matters any, or at least any more than we need to. Okay. So again, the motion is to vary the license to 0 hours. Convener.
Vary.
Thank you. Councillor McClellan.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor McKenzie.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Dunbar.
Agreed.
Thank you. And Councillor Grant.
Agreed.
Thank you. So that's both the Brentwood and the Highland Hotel, the variation to 0 hours.
Moving on, 5.8, which is the park in Radisson. I think there's one update, Mr. Munro.
Yeah, that one has also been paid. So again, that one's no longer under consideration either.
Right, moving on to 5.9, which is the Gurkha Chef at 5 Palmerston Road.
Thank you. Yep, this is another one where we've had no contact whatsoever from the licence holder. The amount payable is 147 in this case, and again you'll see the LSO's report for that one.
Okay, again I would just suggest that we vary the licence to 0 hours, and again with the delegation to officers to reinstate once the licence fee is paid. Are we happy? Mr. Munro, vote.
Okay, thank you. So again, excuse me, the variation to 0 hours as before. Convener.
Vary.
Thank you. Councillor McClellan.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor McKenzie.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Dunbar.
Agreed.
Thank you. And Councillor Grant.
Agreed.
Thank you. So that one is varied as well.
Right, moving on to 5.10, which is Bella Italia, Unit 6, Beach Retail Park.
Yeah, that one has been surrendered. Sorry, Convener. So that one's no longer under consideration.
5.11, the Rohan Cafe Bar.
That one has also been paid. So that again, that one's no longer.
Good. 5.12 is Campbell's Public House, 117 Road.
This is another one where we've not had any contact from the license holder. The fee in this one is 187. Again, the reminders have been sent. As said, there is a suggestion this one may be closed, but it's as I said, we've not been able to get confirmation of that.
Okay, any local knowledge, anyone? No? No.
Did this used to be the 19th hole?
I'm not sure.
I used to work quite close to there when I was 18, so that was a long time ago.
Well, we'll maybe talk about that one day, Councillor Cameron. But okay, again, I just recommend that we vary the application at this stage until we get confirmation if it's closed or not, and delegation to officers to reinstate should it be paid. Maybe otherwise minded. Mr. Munro.
Okay, thank you. So again, same story, vary to 0 hours. Convener.
Vary.
Thank you. Councillor McClellan.
Yep, agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Dunbar.
Agreed.
Excuse me. Thank you. Councillor Grant.
Agreed.
Thank you. So that one will be varied as well.
Thank you. Moving on to 5.13, which is the Balaclava Park on Lock Street. Mr. Munro.
Yeah, slightly different. So at least there's something here. We have a transfer application in for this one. The transfer has actually just this morning being finalised. We have received confirmation from the purchaser's agent that the fee was paid this morning, but what we haven't quite got is the confirmation at our end as yet. So I would maybe suggest this one might be an idea to defer this one, so that if we get the confirmation of payment, then it will fall and obviously won't come back to yourselves. And if we don't get that confirmation, then it can come back to you next time round. I think the circumstances of this one might suggest that that's possibly the best approach for this one.
Thank you, Mr. Munro. Well, I'm happy to agree that. Anybody otherwise minded? Anything that Mr. Munro, again, just want to confirm that we're happy to defer.
No problem. So, excuse me. So the motion this time is to defer this one, just for confirmation that the payment has in fact been made. So, convener.
Defer.
Thank you, Councillor McClellan.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Dunbar.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Grant.
Agreed.
Thank you. So we'll defer that one. As I said, we have had or we have had been advised that it has been paid. So it's just we don't quite have that confirmation yet. So hopefully the deferral won't actually be necessary. It will just fall.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Munro. Right, 5.14, which is Ferry Hill Tavern and Divana Lounge. Now, I'll let Mr. Munro speak first because I do have some knowledge on this one.
Again, there is the breach of condition 10, the amount payable is 187. Reminders have been sent. Again, we've had no word from the licence holder. We believe this place is closed. A little bit of detective work suggests that there has been planning permission. I don't know if it's been granted or applied for conversion to a pizza place. So the suggestion may well be that they don't intend to reopen.
Again, I have got a bit of knowledge on this as planning convener, because and I know that Councillor Mackenzie and Councillor Craig will recall it. It came before the planning committee, I think, about summer last year, I think it was, and it was approved for a pizza. I think it was Papa John's, and the indication on the report that we received, it had been closed for a number of years. So that's certainly my understanding, that it's now been changed to be used as a pizza delivery type restaurant. Councillor Gregg, do you recall the same? You're nodding.
Yes, that's right. And I've driven past. It is closed. Yeah. things are moving on there. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Cameron?
On the back of that, let's assume that the planning application is acceptable and comes to fruition. If we were to revoke this license today, then presumably if the pizza place wanted an off sales, they would have to apply for a new license. If we didn't revoke it today and did what we've done with some of the others, and the assumed new owners then paid the fee, they would only have to ask for a variation for off sales then, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, they would need to vary the terms of the operating plan. They would probably also need to transfer it as well, if it's new owners. I've had a couple of messages ping through from people who obviously know the place. My understanding it is actually open just now, so it's obviously up and operating as a Papa John's place just now. I don't know if they sell alcohol or not, but obviously if they are, then they're not selling it under the right terms, because we still have it down as the Ferry Hill and Davana Lounge. So,
Councillor Townsend?
Yeah, thanks, Convener. The fact it's now operating as a different premises, the amount of money that was owed previously, is that just abandoned by us, or simply a failure of the previous owners to notify?
Well, as I said, it's not operating under the proper terms if it is selling alcohol at the moment. We've not been informed of any change. There's been no transfer done, and there's been no variation to amend the licence in terms of how the premises is operating just now. As I said, I don't have knowledge. I don't know if Papa John's sell alcohol, but it may well be that they're not aware that there's a licence over the premises.
Sorry, my question was really that the previous premises had operated for a number of years as it was, and it was due to pay, but several months have gone past when it's not been operating. Do we just abandon the pursuit of those monies and leave it at that it's no longer?
No, well, it depends what you do. I mean, if you revoke the license, then yes, the money's disregarded, because it's almost payment for the year coming, so that would be removed. If the license remains, if you opt to vary as we've done others, then the fee remains outstanding. It doesn't matter that it may have changed hands, as long as that license is in existence, then the fee is still due.
Can I just ask, because I don't actually know this, but perhaps Councillor McClellan will know, Brewdog's Punk AF, I'm assuming that's, and it's like 0.5 ABV. Is that alcoholic? Because it's got it on their website from sale from College Street.
The AF one's alcohol free, yeah. Or that's my understanding of it anyway.
Well, it's just because it said it had a 0.5, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah,
just to confirm that.
Who can maybe come in on that?
yeah, just to confirm that in order to be classed as alcohol, it has to be over 0.5. So 0.5 and below are classed as, it doesn't count as alcohol.
Okay, well, they're not selling anything, or they're not certainly advertising any other alcoholic drinks on their website. So for delivery from College Street. Councillor Cameron.
I've almost forgotten what I was going to ask now. Okay, so assuming they knew there was a license for that premises, or they were about to find out there was a license, would the new operator then surrender that rather than the actual premises license holder that we have in record?
No, only the license holder can surrender the license. You can't surrender somebody else's license for obvious reasons.
Okay, on that basis then, I would like to suggest that we revoke this license.
I was full agreement with you, Councillor Cameron. And unless anybody's otherwise minded, now I'll go to the vote, Mr. Manager.
Thank you. So, yeah, the suggest or the motion this time is to revoke the license. Convener.
Revoke.
Thank you. Councillor McClellan.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Revoke.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Dunbar.
Agreed.
Thank you. And Councillor Grant.
Can you hear me? Agreed.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it.
thank you. Yeah, sorry.
Thanks. Thank you, folks. Okay, Mr. Munro.
Yep, so 5.15 is Mount Hoodley Sports Bar. The amount payable for this one's 187. And again, the reminders have been sent and we've just had no response from the applicant.
Any local knowledge, folks? Okay. Again, I would just recommend that we zero the hours and give delegation to reinstate should the amendment be made. Anybody otherwise minded? Mr. Munro.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, again, the now familiar motion to vary the licence to have 0 licensed hours and to give delegation to reinstate the hours in the event that the annual fee is paid. So, convener.
Agree.
Thank you. Councillor McClellan.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Dunbar.
Agreed.
Thank you. And Councillor Grant.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Right. Moving swiftly on to 516, which is the Doubletree Hill Beach Boulevard.
Yep. So same story, breach condition 10, the amount payable for this one is 600. Again, the reminders have been sent. Again, we understand like a lot of the Hiltons, this premises is closed, but we've had no response from any of the contacts that we've tried to make.
Okay. Anybody got any knowledge? And that's my understanding. It is closed. I think in fact it might even be partially boarded up. I haven't been down recently, so I may be talking out. You got anything further they can add to that then? Okay, I think just again, given that we haven't had it confirmed and the building is still standing, perhaps we just vary the license to 0 on pending and be paying the fee. Are we happy? Or are we content? I'm not saying any of us are happy about this. There's no other motion. Mr. Murphy, go to the vote.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, so again, just to vary the hours to 0 licensed hours. Convener.
Vary.
Thank you. Councillor McClellan.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Dunbar.
Agreed.
Thank you. And Councillor Grant.
Agreed.
Thank you. So that one is varied to 0 hours.
Sorry, I'm trying not to rush you, Mr. Munro.
No, that's okay.
517 is Buzz Bar, 419 Union Street. Mr. Munro, there's a bit of history to this.
Well, yeah. I mean, in terms of this one again, it's obviously breach condition 10. The amount payable is 187. Reminders have been sent, but we've had no a response from the license holder. This is one that is definitely closed and has been so for conservatively at least 10 years, I believe. They have been paying the annual fee every year. Presumably they were planning on doing something with it, but this year we've had no response. And as I said, it's been closed for a considerable period of time.
Yeah. I mean, Mr. Munro, I mean, we've often said that premises that are closed for a considerable time should be surrendering their license and not just letting it roll on.
Yeah, we do have something in our policy statement that
Yeah.
says it's not used for the sale of alcohol for 6 months or more than, unless they get in touch and explain that they're trying to sell it or what have you, then generally they'll deem the license to have lapsed, and we will generally revoke it. as I said, up until now they've been paying their annual fee. So with everything else, we haven't had the manpower to really enforce that part of the policy statement as vigorously as we possibly should. There's definitely an argument that there are some premises that maybe shouldn't have, or some premises licenses that maybe shouldn't have been allowed to just continue on, because obviously in terms of things like our over provisioned calculation and things like that, it distorts the picture if there are licenses
are not being used. I mean, given that members, you know, I'm kind of in your hands, but I would be suggesting that given that this hasn't been open from effectively roughly, despite them paying their fee, I don't think in terms of taking a license or holding a license that's not being used should be encouraged, because if everybody did that, we'd be in a funny position and if they suddenly all opened up. So members, would you be interested in revoking this license, given what we've heard from Mr. Munro?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Anybody otherwise minded? No. Mr. Munro, can we go to the vote on this then?
Yeah, that's fine. So that'll be a revocation for this one. So convener.
I'd vote.
Thank you, Councillor McClellan.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Dunbar.
Agreed.
Thank you, and Councillor Grant.
Agreed.
Okay, so that one's revoked. The next one, Aberdeen Hero, has been surrendered. And so that one's off. 519 is Bantai. The amount payable this time is 187. Again, the reminders have been sent, and again, we've had no response for that one.
Okay, again, I would just recommend that we zero the hours with the delegation to officers to reinstate. Maybe otherwise minded? No. Because again, it does indicate that they're doing takeaways, just having a quick look at them. So as I say, I think they are aware that they should be actually paying their fee. So Mr. Munro, you just
Yeah, okay, so again, the variation to 0 hours. Convener?
Zero, sorry, Gary.
Agreed, will be fine.
Yeah, agreed.
Councillor McClellan?
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend?
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie?
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron?
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg?
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Dunbar?
Agreed.
Thank you. And Councillor Grant? Thank you.
I'll see. Give you a minute. I was going to.
No, that's okay. 520 is La Bonne Brasserie. Again, 187. The reminders have been sent. I think there's a suggestion that there's been a change of operation, but again, we've not had that officially. I think that's possibly in the LSO's report that's detailed. But again, we've had no response to any of the correspondence.
Okay. On that basis, again, I would just vary the application to the hours to 0 and give the delegation to yourselves, Mr. Munro.
Okay. So again, the variation to 0 hours. Convener?
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor McClellan?
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend?
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie?
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron?
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg?
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Dunbar?
Agreed.
Thank you. And Councillor Grant?
Agreed.
Thank you. Moving on, 521 is the Hilton Garden Inn. Again, another breach of condition 10. The fee for this one is 600. Again, we believe it's closed like most of those. But again, we've not had any response.
Again, I would just suggest that you vary the license to 0 hours with a delegation to yourselves, Mr. Munro. Any otherwise minded? No. Mr. Monroe, could you just put the vote?
Yep. So again, same story, 0 hours at the moment. So convener.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor McClellan.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Dunbar.
Agreed.
Thank you. And Councillor Grant.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Now the next one, the Doubletree Hilton, or the Treetops as it's more commonly known to all of us. I think we can definitely consider revoking this license, given there's not a building existing anymore.
Yeah, there's not a lot else to add to that, really.
Sorry.
Again, we haven't heard from anyone to surrender the license or anything, but as you said, it has been demolished. So the suggestion is certainly that it's not going to be used anymore.
Yes. So unless anybody's otherwise minded now, okay, if you just again go to the vote.
Okay, so that's for revocation. So convener.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor McClellan.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Dunbar.
Agreed.
Thank you, and Councillor Grant.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Next, 523, which is the Hamburger Company.
Yeah, thank you. Again, the amount payable for this one is 600. Reminders have been sent. We believe they're closed. We've actually, I think Audrey Junior's still on, possibly at the meeting. We've got a message saying that they went into administration and they've gone into a second administration in January 2020, and they've not had any contact since then. I think Audrey said she understands they are out of the unit but can't say for certain.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not really instructed by them at this stage, but I just thought I would see if there's anything I could add. So the first company, which was Handmade Burger Company, went into administration 2019 or 2018, it might be now. Another company then came in, which is the current license holding company. And that license holding company didn't go into administration, but the operating company did. So the license didn't have to be automatically transferred as would be required if it had been the license holding company that had gone into administration. But from what I can work out, they haven't traded since at least January last year, and they seem to be out of the unit. But I've tried to contact them the last couple of days. One of our contacts is now no longer, as you might expect, working at that company. The other one, I've got a message out to call me back. I think perhaps the best way to approach this one might be similar to the other ones in that vary the license at this stage. I think you probably look like it will be a surrender at some point quite soon. But often with these things, there's requirements to transfer it back to the landlord. So I just didn't want to kind of commit to too much about that at this stage, but I can certainly continue to try and get in touch with them for you.
Thanks very much, Audrey. That's really helpful. So with that additional information, again, can I just suggest that we vary it to 0 hours and leave it with a delegation with Mr. to reinstate if they pay the fee. Agree? That looks like it's again for completeness. Mr. Monroe, if you can just go the call.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for that, Audrey. That's appreciated. So again, the same story to currently vary the licence to 0 hours. Convener.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor McClellan.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Dunbar.
Agreed.
Thank you, and Councillor Grant.
Agreed.
Thank you.
We're getting there, folks. We're now on to perhaps a similar scenario. We're on Yo Sushi Unit 2 Bonaccord Centre, although we believe that there might be a subway in that location now.
Yeah, we've had an updated response from an agent from there as well. these premises ceased trading on 14th of October 2018, and as far as I'm aware, have not been used for the sale of alcohol since then. At around the same time, they were handed back to the landlord, so none of the Yo Sushi companies has any interest in the premises. In the circumstances, I do not have instructions to surrender the licence. However, it seems to me that the licence has ceased to have effect in terms of section 28(5)(b). Moreover, the premises manager ceased to work at the premises on 14th of October 2018.
Okay. Well, with that, I would suggest then that we just revoke it, given what you've said, Mr. Munro. Any otherwise minded? No. Again, Mr. Munro, can you just read it?
Yeah, so that would be a revocation. Convener?
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor McClellan.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Dunbar.
Agreed.
Thank you, and Councillor Grant.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on to 525, which is B&M Stores. I believe you've got an update, Mr. Munro.
Yeah, that one has been paid. So again, that's no longer under consideration. 5.26 is Las Iguanas. Again, £600. Again, the reminders have been sent. We believe this is also closed, but again, we have not received any official word from the licence holder.
Okay, again, I would suggest we just vary it to 0 and give delegation to Mr. Munro. So we just go to the vote. I don't see any other suggestions.
Okay, so again, vary to 0 hours. Convener?
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor McClellan.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Dunbar.
Agreed.
Thank you, and Councillor Grant. Thank you. So that one is varied.
Right. The last one on the list is 527, which is 5 Great Western Place. Mr. Munro again.
Thank you. Yeah, again, we have had no, sorry, the licence holder did come back and indicate that this place had been closed in January 2020 and intended to surrender the licence, but it's not been officially surrendered. You'll see from the LSO's report that the premises is now a nail bar with the quite tremendous name of Get Nailed by Claudia. I'm assuming it's a nail bar. So all indications are that the premises is no longer used for the sale of alcohol.
With what we've heard from Mr. Munro, can we agree to revoke this licence? Anybody otherwise minded? Okay, Mr. Munro, you can just go to the call.
Okay, thank you. So, yep, this will be a revocation. So, Convener.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor McClellan.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Gregg.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Dunbar.
Agreed.
Thank you, and Councillor Grant. Thank you. So that one is revoked. And you will please know that's the last of the annual fees.
Okay. I mean, forward, I know none of us want to see any restrictions put in place of our hospitality sector in this current environment. And I think what we've tried to do today is be able to allow them to establish their business as quickly as they can. But, you know, we have to have due consideration to is a breach of the licensing condition, and also that there are hundreds of others who have been in a similar position that have paid. So I think, in fairness to all, I think we've handled it as prudently or sensibly, we should say, as we can. Members, I'm conscious it's almost 12:30 now. I don't know if you want just a 5-minute comfort break and then to continue with, we've got a review hearing for the Victoria Bar and 2 personal applications, or if you want to have a lunch break. I'm in your hands, so if anybody wants to indicate, if I suggest a 5-minute comfort break, if other people are otherwise minded, if you can indicate.
Happy to take a minute. Happy to take 5 minutes or so, but we'd be keen to continue and get it done.
Is everybody keen to continue? We'll just take 5 minutes now. Yeah, okay, right, 5 minutes. So if we come back at 25 to 1 and we'll crack on. Okay, thanks, folks. We all back? Are you there, Mr. Munro? Are you with us?
In body, if not in spirit, yes.
I'm glad you're in body. I know it's spirit. Are we all back? Thanks, Cameron, McClellan, and Mackenzie. I'll just wait for their cameras to go on and then we'll get started on the next item. Is Mr. McGowan with us?
Yes, convener. Good afternoon. I'm here.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm full of the joys as always, convener. Full of the joys.
You've had quite a haircut there.
Yes, I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best to copy my favourite licensing lawyer, Sandy Munro.
well, he's got a kind of new tie, so you'd have to take your tie off, otherwise, we'll know the difference.
I'm sure there's a legal maxim along the lines of imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So we'll just leave it. We'll just leave it at that, convener, shall we?
Just stop there.
Okay. Can I just ask the rest of the members, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor McClelland, and Barth, open your cameras. Just wait. This one there. I'm just Councillor McClelland. Are you there, Councillor Mackenzie? I haven't managed to eat my jammy dodger that I got with my cup of tea. Okay, Mr. Munro, we're on to item 6, which is the premises license review hearing for the Victoria Bar. If I could hand over to you.
Yeah, thank you, convener. You'll recall this is one that was initially called in January and was deferred at the request of the licence holder due to obviously the lockdown that was just put in place around that kind of time. The review proposal is one from Police Scotland, which is obviously within your papers. Mr. McGowan has provided some documentation which has been circulated to members as well. So just by the way this one will go, technically the police are the applicants in this time, so it'll be the police to go first. Then Mr. McGowan, representing the licence holder, will get a chance to respond, and then as normal the police to come back in if there's anything additional to add before questions to all members. It's a review hearing, so your options are the same as those with the annual fee ones if you determine that the action is necessary. So that's a written warning, a variation, a suspension or a revocation. You'll of course be aware that it is possible during the course of a premises licence review, if the board determined that a personal licence holder has acted in, or their conduct is inconsistent with the licensing objectives, to review a personal licence. But just to be clear, that would not happen at this board. None of the personal licence holders have been requested to attend this board. So if you determine that at the close of the hearing, then that would be for the next board meeting, which is a couple of months' time. I don't know off the top of my head, but we would instigate that process at the end. So there won't be any personal licences reviewed at this one. So that's just for clarity.
Thanks very much, Mr. Munro. Sergeant Flick, would you like to kick off with your letter, please?
Yes, thank you. This isn't a particularly lengthy or complex letter and submission by the police. I'll just lead you through the salient points. You will recall that on Friday the 9th of October, restrictions, the ever-changing landscape of restrictions changed yet again. And the impact of that was that licensed premises for the purposes of on sale could no longer sell alcohol. They had to close from 1800 hours that day. And they could open only until 1800 thereafter, but not for the sale of alcohol. So they could sell Coca-Cola and crisps if so be it. So that's what took place commencing 1800 hours on Friday the 9th of October. Now at 20:44 hours same day, Police Scotland received an anonymous report of a lock-in at the Victoria Bar. Short time later, police officers did attend at the premises, and on arrival, the doors were shut, locked, and the police officers weren't able to see into the premises. After knocking continuously, a lady called Tracy Allison, a staff member, came to the door and identified herself as being in charge. The police officers noted that she was smelling alcohol on her breath. The police officers explained the reason for their attendance, but this lady refused to allow the police into the premises and stated that no one was within. The police officers were of the opinion they could hear voices within, and they effected entry. And on entering, they found 4 other people within. 3 people were seated at a table upon which there were a number of drinks, and one of the party stated that they were just having a few drinks. So present within the premises were 2 ladies called Anne-Marie Fowler and Julie Main, who both are also employees at the premises, and they both hold personal licenses under the Act. Julie Main was one of the group seated at the table, the drinks in front of her, and Anne-Marie Fowler was behind the bar and appeared to be cleaning glasses. All 5 persons present were made aware and reminded the restrictions that had changed at 6 o'clock that day with regards to the coronavirus legislation. They all left the premises on the police's instruction, and the premises was secured up. On Monday, the 12th of October, a representative of the premises licence holder was contacted by myself and also the DPM, Mr. Latasev, who was actually on holiday, if I remember, in Cyprus at the time, and both were made aware of the circumstances. Now, the DPM was Tracy Allison at the time, and the DPM confirmed that Tracy Allison was responsible for the premises on that day, and offered that the premises was to be prepared for possibly closing for a period of time. Tracy Allison was cautioned and charged with obstructing a police officer from entering licensed premises and also a contravention of the health protection regulations in place at the time, and the matter was reported to the Procurator Fiscal. Please believe it's appropriate that we bring this matter to the licensing board for you to consider the grounds for review and for you to take such steps as you believe necessary in support of the licensing objectives. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll hand over to yourself, Mr. McGowan.
Yes, good afternoon again. Convener and Your Honours, thank you to Sergeant Flett for her presentation there. With me on the call today, Your Honours, is both Jim McDougall and Michael Thomas from IP Partnership Limited, the premises licence holder, who are broadly more recognisable under the brand Iona, which is the sort of brand name for this particular company. Jim McDougall is the local area manager. He's the person which Sergeant Flett spoke to at the time, which I'll obviously come on to. Michael Thomas is also on the call, is Jim's line manager, essentially, in overall charge for Scotland, and is a person who's referred to in some of the documents which I've submitted for consideration. I'm going to give you a wee bit of background, Your Honours, but I just thought I should just make an initial comment to hopefully give you a bit of comfort about the documents that I've supplied. I don't propose on going through 52 pages worth of detail. What I do propose to do is to summarise what those documents are and to tell Your Honours why I think they're relevant to you. Now, of course, if Your Honours want to interrogate any of the detail of that, I'm happy to take any questions. As you know, I always will be. But I just wanted to immediately say, don't worry, I'm not going to read out 52 pages of the submissions. So in terms of the background here, Your Honours, before we go into the incident itself from October, the pub's owned by Iona. It's a leased premises, so as Your Honours will understand, you've dealt with this type of situation in many occasions before. Iona, the premises licence holder, don't operate the pub directly. It's leased, and the tenant runs the premises. In this case, it's Mr. Latasev, Yevgeny Latasev, who is the tenant. He took on a lease of this pub back in May 2016, and actually just recently has agreed a 3-year extension to his lease. And Iona and Mr. Latasev as a tenant have a very strong relationship. Iona stand behind Mr. Latasev as the tenant of this unit, and the extension of the lease is a good signal of that. They've also just completed a 75k investment on this premises. So other than this incident in October, I think this is a premises where you have a good functioning relationship between the landlord and the tenant, a supportive relationship. And it's a premises which hasn't come to Your Honour's attention, as far as I'm aware, for any adverse reason. Your Honours will have seen Diane's report, the LSO's report, in relation to any sort of wider background. And you may have noted that there's a couple of sort of incidents there, but they're really minor. And in fact, my reading of them was that the LSO was quite complimentary about Mr Lattice's running of the pub, and where there had been one or two wrinkles, he has worked in full compliance with the LSOs to make sure that those issues were dealt with swiftly. So in fairness, I think that the LSO's report of the wider compliance of the premises is a positive one, which hopefully is something that Your Honours can take comfort from. I think that is helpful from my perspective, because it allows me to say to Your Honours that this is a single incident. There is no wider pattern of concern. Also, I'm grateful for Sergeant Flett confirming the absence at the time of Mr Lattice, the tenant. He wasn't in the country, he wasn't present, he wasn't aware of the actions of his employee on this particular occasion. And Your Honours, I think the same is also true to say for Iona as the premises licence holder. I think it's fair for me to say that they're far from happy to be in this position, and they absolutely distance themselves from the actions of the individuals who have been named in the letter from Sergeant Flett. The police have had regard to those individuals, and they have noted to Your Honours that they are personal licence holders. And you heard from the clerk, obviously, at the start of the hearing about the sort of procedural aspects of that. And I think it's incumbent upon me to remind Your Honours that, of course, we're dealing with the premises licence holder here. And I suppose my point there would be to say to Your Honours and to ask Your Honours to separate the actions of Iona as the premises licence holder in relation to this incident when the new 6 PM rule came in. Separate their actions from the actions of the individuals who are named in the letter. It may well be, Your Honours, and this is something for you to consider, but it may be that you will take a very dim view as to the actions of Tracy Allison, given the terms of Sergeant Flett's letter. I think it's fair to say that Iona share that sentiment, and it's certainly the case that Mr Lattice shared that sentiment, because, having been made aware of the incident, her employment was terminated. And I'll come back to that in terms of a timeline so that Your Honours can see what was done and when. But in terms of this being a premises licence review, what I'm asking you to do, Your Honours, is to consider not necessarily Miss Allison's actions, but to look at Iona as the premises licence holder. The police are asking Your Honours to review the premises licence with regard to the two licensing objectives, public health and preventing crime and disorder. And I should make it clear that I don't represent Miss Allison. I'm not here to speak or defend Miss Allison, and I'm here only to speak on behalf of Iona. Now, just taking a slight step back, Your Honours, one of the general points that I'd ask you to agree with me with is that I will say that Iona, I don't think, can be painted as a disinterested landlord when it comes to observing the various different corona rules that, you know, all pubs and hospitality businesses have been having to live through. I think we all accept, Your Honours, we all know it's been a very challenging time with the rules changing so often, but it wouldn't be correct to say or assume that Iona have sat on their hands during this period. So, Your Honours, I did submit to you through Your Honours Clerk's office a bundle of papers, and what these papers show, as I said, I'm not going to go into them line by line, but in general, Your Honours, what the papers show is that Iona have been a very supportive premises licence holder across all of their pubs, the Victoria Bar included. There's about 100, 110, I think, pubs that Iona run across the country. And they've been in constant contact with all of those pubs to help them, to reinforce the messages from the government, and obviously, importantly, to ensure that they were aware of and following the various rules. So at the start of the pack I've given to Your Honours, you'll see there's an email from the client, Michael Thomas is on the call, to me, which I've shared with you, and you'll see communication on the 7th of October, which was sent to all of their pubs, including the Victoria Bar, confirming and underlining the new rules, and in particular the 6 p.m. cut-off, which is very central to the case today. That's over the sort of first 2 or 3 pages of the bundle that I've sent you through. The next 20 odd pages, Your Honours, are weekly updates which are issued by Michael Thomas, one of the gentlemen who's on the call today. Now, as I said, I'm not going to take you through all of these individually, but if you flick through them and get a sense of them, I think Your Honours would hopefully be with me in saying that what you see here is a very active, interested person, Mr. Thomas, who of course is representing the sort of head office of Iona. And my reading of his communications, weekly communications to all of the pubs, including the Victoria Bar, is that he's taken a very proactive, a very personable even, supportive role on behalf of head office to help and support all the tenants during these difficult times. And you can see that he, at the end of every one of these reports, makes himself personally available. And I would say to Your Honours that those are the actions of a responsible licence holder and a good landlord. And I would think that Your Honours would be happy to see that that's the action that's been taken across the board by this particular licence holder. The other point to make generally is that out of the 110 odd pubs that Iona have, this is the only case that I'm aware of where there has been a breach of coronavirus regulations. So, Your Honours, those sort of first 28 pages is my effort to convince you that here you have a very responsible licence holder that has actively gone out of their way to support and people through these difficult times, but also ensure compliance. Now, the second half of the pack that I've presented to you is about the specific interactions with the Victoria Bar. This is approximately from page 29 through to page 45, I think, or thereabouts. That suite of documents is the due diligence and written reports conducted by Jim McDougall, who's on the call today, he being the local area manager and the face of Iona as regards the Victoria Bar and other premises in the area. Now, again, I'm not going to go through these line by line, but I think what this shows is that you've got a person representing the company, Mr. McDougall, who's had a very strong and very significant series of communications with this particular premises through these difficult times. You can see, flicking through the documents, if I give you a sort of brief timeline here, Your Honours, going back to, we've taken this back a year, of course, these inspections have been ongoing for some time, but to give you a sort of reasonable context, we've taken it back a year or so to February 2019, I should say. You've got various due diligence checks. You can see that there's letters sent from Jim to Mr. Latasev to ask him to do various things like bring his fire risk assessment up to date. There is visits in July. There are various due diligence reports and checks carried out by Jim to make sure that the premises is doing everything that Your Honours would expect it to do, making sure the paperwork's up to date, the staff training records are in place, the site notices are displayed, all of that good stuff that Your Honours expect a licence holder to do is all captured in these various ongoing meetings. These continue in August and October into January. Now, they're fairly regular at this point. Your Honours will understand that once we get into the early part of 2020, the visits are a bit more staggered for obvious reasons in terms of the various lockdowns that we've gone through. But you can see, for example, in September of last year, a full due diligence checklist was conducted with pass marks, and that was the last interaction that Jim McDougall had with the premises before the incident. So that again is by way of trying to evidence to Your Honours that you don't have a hands-off landlord here. You've got a landlord who's been very supportive towards this premise as well as the other premises that they have. And in this case, what you've also got is evidence of demonstrable compliance from the pub operator, Mr. Latasev, which links to the LSO's views and what is in Diane's report. That brings me to the incident, Your Honours. It's I think it was the 12th of October, just a few days after that Sergeant Flett called Mr. McDougall to speak with him and Mr. Latasev about the incident, and I'm grateful to Sergeant Flett for acknowledging that. Needless to say, obviously, Mr McDougall's unhappy about the fact that this incident has occurred. He attends at the premises on the 19th of October, and that's when he is advised that Mr Latasev has decided to terminate the employment of Miss Allison. Your Honours, I did submit to the clerk's office a copy of the termination letter. I think you may have that in your pack, but I'm sure Mr Munro can confirm that I've given that paperwork in, should your Honours wish to see it. So the incident's obviously discussed. I think Mr Latasev has been very clear and very robust in his response about how unacceptable the actions of Miss Allison were in his absence, and another full due diligence checklist is dealt with at that time as well. Mr McDougall has spoken with Mr Latasev on numerous occasions since the incident, and as Mr Munro pointed out, I actually was due to go up to see the premises and meet Mr Latasev and do another inspection in early January, but I wasn't able to do that because of the lockdown, and hence the reason the application was continued. I should say thank you to your Honours, because you very kindly agreed on my behalf to continue the application to try to allow me to get up to visit the premises, but obviously I wasn't able to do that, and we are where we are now. So, your Honours, that's by way of context. What I'm trying to do here, hopefully you can see, is that I'm trying to join the dots for you to say that whilst there is an incident here, when you look at the wider ways in which the premises licence holder has sought to support their tenant, Mr Latasev, in this case, in terms of compliance and the fact that there are no other issues, hopefully sends you a signal as to how you deem the actions of the premises licence holder. When you're in cases like this, your Honours, I suppose from my perspective, you won't be surprised to hear me say you try to play devil's advocate. You try to say, I wonder what the board will ask me here, you know, what's Councillor Cameron going to make of this, or whoever it may be, you know, and I think there may be a few questions. And one of the things that, you know, you tend to get in a case like this is to say to yourself, could the premises licence holder have foreseen an incident of this nature? And I would put to you, your Honours, I don't think that would be a proportionate view to take. I don't think that Iona could have foreseen this non-compliance. And I also don't think that Mr Latasev could have foreseen that Miss Allison would have chose to behave on the day on the way that she did. You also then say to yourself, if we accept that, you know, there's no way that Iona could have known that this would happen, did they assume compliance with the 6 PM rule, or was there proactivity? Now, I've taken a wee bit of time, your Honours, to try to give you comfort that there absolutely was proactivity, not just in relation to the 6 PM rule, but in relation to all of the various changes which have happened, which I think is important in this case to show you that they have done that throughout the various changes. And I would hope that you would agree with me that those steps are not the steps of a disinterested, hands-off landlord premises licence holder. And then I suppose you say, what's happened since the incident? Has there been any action? You've heard from me about that as well, your Honours. I think in general, one of the points that I want to say about this element of it is we absolutely support Mr Latasev. We stand behind him as our tenant. We think he's a good tenant. We think he runs this pub well. And, you know, for his business, we want to protect his business as well as our own licence as an asset, because we do think he is a good, strong tenant. He is running that pub well, and we take the view that we absolutely believe that he was unaware of this incident and absolutely did not condone it. And you've seen his very robust reaction to it. Is it likely to happen again? Well, your Honours, you have an absolute undertaking from me on behalf of Iona that every effort will be made to ensure that this doesn't happen again. And of course, you've seen them comply with the subsequent rules and subsequent lockdowns which have happened since October. In a case like this, your Honours, I think there's a fundamental question, which is, are the grounds of review established? You know, that's what your Honours are looking to try to reach a view on. You've heard from me that the premises licence holder completely distanced themselves from the actions of the individual who, it seems to me, from what the police have said, has breached the corona regulations. There is a technical process to follow. Have the grounds of review been established? So there is a a kind of technical point I'm required to make. It's incumbent upon me to make, which is, in terms of the grounds for review, is this corona regulatory breach a licensing breach per se? I noticed that the police have charged Miss Allison in relation to the matter, and from a jurisdictional perspective, I would just make the observation that perhaps that in this case, in relation to the breach of corona regulations, it's not necessarily a licensing matter, but more of a police and environmental health matter. Now, that's an observation from me, Your Honours. I would rather that you paid much more attention and give much more weight to the wider points that I've made about the actions of the licence holder, because I think that's the more important thrust of my argument. But you'll understand I'm required to make that observation. I'm sure Mr Munro will take the point that I'm trying to make here about the sort of non-licensing purpose. But Your Honours, as I say, I hope that you're comforted with what I've said, even if I am saying to you that I don't think the correct decision is to establish the grounds for review and simply to end the matter, having heard from me with respect of the viewpoint of the premises licence holder. I definitely take the view that if you're with me on what I've said and you agree with what I've said, that the proportionate outcome would be to either decide that the grounds are not established for the reasons that I've outlined, or from a technical perspective, if you think the grounds are established and you don't take my technical point in that regard, that the appropriate and proportionate outcome here would be to take no action with respect to the premises licence, and to remind Your Honours of the point which was made earlier, which is to say that it is open to Your Honours to decide, as a result of hearing from me and from Sergeant Flett, it is open to you to look to conduct a review in relation to the 3 personal licences of the individuals who were involved. And from my perspective, that's a matter for you to decide. But it would seem to me that, given I've said that we distance ourselves from the actions of those individuals, that would be, from my perspective, the more proportionate outcome, which is to note what I've said, hopefully be happy with what I've said, and then to decide for yourselves what to do about the individual's personal licences. Your Honours, I think that's enough from me at the moment, so thanks very much for allowing me to go through all of that. As always, Your Honours, I'll happily take any questions that you have for me, and thanks for your time.
Okay, thanks very much, Mr McGowan. If we can just give the police the opportunity to come back, having heard Mr McGowan.
Yes, thank you. Firstly, I'll apologise for forgetting to turn off my camera and subjecting you all to watching me nosh my banana and stretch. Just one point, I agree with Mr McGowan. It is a national discussion. Does breaching coronavirus regulations become a licensing matter? I think the bottom line is licensed premises being required to close under legislation that we didn't even know about a year ago, never mind when the Licence in Scotland Act was created. And if there was errant conduct found arising from that connected to the licensed premises, I think that does pull it into the remit of the licensing board. However, it's a topic under national discussion. But other than that, no, I've nothing more to add. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sergeant Flett. Members, questions for either Mr McGowan or Sergeant Flett? I'm not seeing any hands yet. Oh, Councillor Townsend, I'm glad you didn't disappoint.
Yeah, so question for Mr McGowan. He's made comment about how proactive the communications were from Michael Thomas. And having read through all the documentation that's provided, I have to rate it quite highly myself, but that's my opinion. I just wondered if you could give any opinion, or can you inform us what levels other operators have communicated? How does it compare on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being really high? How does Mr Michael Thomas's communications compare to any other premises as aware of?
Good question, Councillor Townsend. You'll forgive me that in some cases I'm restricted in answering that question, because you know that I act for other licence holders with multiple premises, and you know that it wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment on the individual processes of those holders, so I'll have to answer in a generality. I hope you'll forgive me for that. In general speaking, I would say that my experience of the licensed trade generally is that, having gone through such an awful time, I think they've redoubled efforts, and I'm proud of the licensed trade and clients that I have in terms of how they've reacted to this. That's a very general comment. There are, of course, individual examples of licence holders of various colour who have breached, coronavirus regulations, and your honours have heard cases in this board area, and I'm sure you've seen press of other boards who have had to deal with these things. But sitting on task forces and various groups and committees that I do, my general point would be, I think that the licence trade really should be commended for their various efforts across this whole difficult period. I mean, I really have seen it for myself, and they're going through such a tough time that I think in general terms, the level that you've seen from Mr. Thomas in this case is absolutely complimentary. And I should probably just draw a line there so that I'm not speaking too much about individual matters, and I'm sure you'll understand that, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you for actually attempting it, Mr. McGowan, because I do realise that it was comparing clients with clients at that point. I think that's I'm sure we've been grateful for your efforts there. Councillor Townsend, is there anything further you want to say?
Sorry, I had a bit of technical difficulty there. Thank you for that answer. I know it's maybe an unfair question to put to you. The second question I've got is I've got the name correct. Is it Lattisby?
Lattisby.
Yeah. Was it an unfortunate reason he was absent? What caused him to be away from the premises specifically?
I don't know the exact ins and outs of that, but I understand that he was abroad. I don't know the reasons why he was abroad. You've heard from Sergeant Flett, who spoke to him at the time. I think he was in Cyprus, but that's as much as I know, Councillor. I don't know the reasons why.
Okay. Is that you, Councillor Townsend? Yeah. Okay.
With your patience, Convener, just got one third and final question to put. When the Licensing Act brought about the reasons for review grounds, prevent crime and disorder, protect and improve public health, we would be at that time looking at the public health issue being consumption of alcohol. But is it in the mind of Sergeant Flett and others that protect and improve public health could now be directly related to the provisions of the coronavirus regulations for the coronavirus itself?
Sergeant Flett?
Well, please make that suggestion and have included it in all review letters relating to coronavirus breaches, and probably ask that you see that particular licensing objective in its broadest sense. But you're absolutely right. When that was embedded in legislation, nobody even knew what coronavirus was. So.
Mr. McGowan, do you want to make a stab?
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I mean, I've said earlier, I don't want this particular point to be the focus of the hearing. I think that, I'm saying to you, I think the focus should be on the actions of my client, but I'm required to make these points here. I'm sure you'll understand that. So what I would say generally is that whilst I absolutely agree with Sergeant Flett that when the Licensing Scotland Act was passed, no one was aware of coronavirus, it's very clear from the jurisprudence that notwithstanding the existence of coronavirus, licensing has a proper purpose, and the proper purpose is the regulation of alcohol. And it's absolutely clear from the jurisprudence that when your honours are considering any of the licensing objectives, they must be viewed through the prism of alcohol consumption and alcohol harm. Your clerk, Mr. Monroe, will be more than well aware of a slew of cases in this regard. And in fact, your honours have been subject to appeal cases which also make these points. So I won't start trotting out case names, but I think there is a point to be made here. I mean, I definitely take Sergeant Flett's point that this is subject to wider conversation. It absolutely is. And I've appeared in front of various licensing boards across the country in similar review hearings. And, to be fair with your honours, what I would say to you is Some of the responses I've had from other licensing boards has been to very bluntly agree that it's not a licensing board matter and dismiss the case. And other boards have said differently, and other boards have said, well, we think it probably is a licensing matter, but we're going to take no action because we're satisfied with whatever the operator had done in relation to the breach. And then, of course, some licensing boards have taken action, such as suspension and revocation of licences. So there's a variety of approaches which have been taken. I don't think there's a clear consensus at board level at the moment on this, because it is an emerging area. But notwithstanding that, what there is a consensus on, and this is, I think, something we can absolutely be clear on, is that your honours are required to take decisions which are lawful, and that means you have to have regard to the jurisprudence. But that's the case law. And the case law is absolutely clear that the proper purpose of licensing is about the focus on alcohol. If I can drill this down to a very brief example, if this premises was subject to a complaint in relation to food hygiene, would that come before your honours? No, it wouldn't. It would go to environmental health. It's the same principle, your honours. So that's why I say that, although it's a bit of a technical question, I do put it to you that it may be the case that the grounds for review should not be established because it's not a licensing matter. And that's for your honours to decide.
Thank you, Mr McGowan. Councillor Gregg, you've waited patiently.
Thank you, Convener. I have a particular question about the audit, the diligence checklists that are provided from pages 67 onwards. There are two of these audits. One is the 2nd of September, and then there's a further one on the 19th of October. The second one includes sections on COVID compliance. So I'm just looking for some information on what's the significance of the inclusion of that set of assessment criteria, and also what is the significance of failing one of those criterion, which is not completing the assessment. I'm just trying to get an understanding of. I'm just trying to evaluate what is the significance of that.
So I'm happy to answer that, Councillor Gregg. With any licensed business, there is a myriad of regulatory regimes that they have to comply with. So if you're in charge of that business, but you lease it to a tenant, and you've got an obligation to ensure that that tenant meets those various regimes, those matters will be covered off by someone like Mr McDougall, because his role is not just to ensure that the tenant is complying with the Licensing Act, but to ensure that he's complying with other obligations. So, for example, some of the things you might see in these inspection reports is to do with, for example, cellar safety. You know, is the cellar up to date? Is the gas secured properly in the cellar? These are not licensing board matters, but they will appear in the communications between a pubco landlord and their tenant, because these are things that have to be adhered to. The same thing with the earliest reference that I mentioned, which is the report from February 2019. You'll see that Mr McDougall writes to Mr Lattisafe to say you need to update your fire risk assessment and have a copy on the premises. Again, that's not a licensing board matter, that's a matter for the fire authority. But as a responsible business, Iona, try to do their best to cover all of these areas. So the documents you have before you will contain matters which are not overly relevant. Your purpose is as a licensing board. But what I would say to you is that the fact that you can see them and you can see that they're being actioned hopefully gives you that wider comfort that I've tried to draw out in this case, that Iona are a responsible, fit and proper person, essentially, in the roundest terms. I hope that helps, Councillor Gregg.
Thank you. I was particularly keen to find out the reason for that update in the format of the assessment. What's the reason for adding in the COVID-19 compliance policy in that in the 19th of October version?
Well, Iona will have taken an action point to ensure that having there been a breach by an employee of their tenant, they've obviously reacted to that by introducing a question to make sure that there's continued compliance. That is a reaction to the incident which occurred I said to you earlier on, Councillor Gregg, that when you look at this, you try to take a step back and think, what's the operator done prior to an incident occurring, and then you think about what actions did the operator take after the incident occurred. So for me, it's a positive that you can see that the operator has responded by introducing this question, because the alternative is that the hypothetical alternative is that they've simply ignored it and it's been business as usual, and that's absolutely not the case here. You know, you can hopefully see from what I'm saying in the documents before you that Iona have not treated this as business as usual. They absolutely do treat this very seriously, and I think one of the other messages, just to finish on answering that question, Councillor, is to say that that's something that is done across all the pubs. You know, so it's something that, because they've seen it happen at the Victoria Bar, they're learning from that and they're looking to advance and adapt their processes across their entire estate. And again, I would suggest to you that that's something that you would want to see from a licence holder.
Yes, thank you. I think it is positive that 7 of the 8 are all greens, are all yes. It's good to see the compliance, but there is non-compliance with completing the COVID risk assessment, and I wondered if there was a reason for that failure.
I don't have that detail immediately to hand. I can perhaps have a quick conference call with my client and go on mute to answer that, if you want me to, Councillor. But these documents that I've presented to you have not been redacted, and we've given them to you warts and all. So, for example, you see the earlier comment where there was a fire risk assessment that needed to be done, but that's because we want to be open and transparent with your honours, and what we're showing to you here is that this is a journey. You know, in terms of compliance, there's always going to be something that crops up that needs to be addressed, and we're showing that to you very transparently to say that we have caught things that need to be addressed, and the key point is we've then addressed them. If you want me to give that specific answer, your honours, you'll need to give me a moment to take an instruction, so I don't have that in detail to hand.
I don't think it's essential. Thank you for that response. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. McGowan. Any other questions for either the police or Mr. McGowan? I'm not seeing any hands. Okay. Members, you obviously have the opportunity, if you want to take any private legal advice from Mr. Munro. Is anybody wanting to go down that route? Again, I'm not seeing any indications at this stage. Okay, well, with that in mind, and I'm sure Mr. Munro will jump in if I'm getting this back to front, if Mr. McGowan wants to sum up any points that he wants to make, and then it's over to the applicant, in this case the police, to give their summing up.
Nothing further. Thank you for the opportunity, convener, but I think you know my case, so I've got nothing further to add. Thanks for your time.
Okay, thanks. Sergeant Flett, is there anything further that you'd like to add?
No, not really, thank you.
Okay, members, if we could then just obviously discuss what we've heard from Mr. McGowan, obviously the report from Sergeant Flett. I think that obviously COVID has thrown up a plethora of unknowns and challenges and various things that people hadn't expected to have to deal with in today's world. You know, and you know, the question is this a licensing matter or not? And I think while there's a level of dubiety, I would rather err on the side of caution. So that's why, you know, I was content to take this review hearing. However, I think we look at the points that Mr. McGowan has raised, and that's about showing the standard practice. And I would suggest the way they have reacted in terms, or they haven't just reacted, but the way they conduct their business around their tenants. Having been on the board for many years, there has been several times where I've wondered if it's just been a case of taking the money from tenants. And I think it's been demonstrated by the documents supplied by Mr. McGowan that Iona have been far from just a tenant that's taken the money. They've actually tried, sorry, a landlord. They've actually tried to support and nurture the relationship with the tenant. So from my perspective, I think that there's adequate information here that gives me confidence that the premises license holder has acted in a way that they haven't caused the situation. I think they've done everything they can. There are regular updates that have come through to the tenant, and I think this has been down to an employee that has unfortunately let them down in her conduct. So from my consideration, I'm not of the view that the premises license holder is at fault here. And members, would you like to contribute to the discussion? Anybody got anything further they would like to add or disagree with me? Again, Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Convener. I would concur with everything you've said. I mean, I think there has been cause for a hearing, just because of the, I suppose, lack of time to get our head round what actually constitutes something that should come to licensing. But my gut feel in terms of the information that's been provided to us, and I'm looking at the options open to us, and what I'm going to suggest isn't one of the options, and that is that we take no action, even although we agree that a hearing was appropriate. Yeah. Thank you.
No. Does anybody else want to add anything either? No. I totally concur with you, Councillor Cameron. I'm of the view that we take no action. However, I didn't want to be seen to completely lead you all down a path. So unless there's anybody otherwise minded, I would suggest that, again, we go to Mr. Munro and agree that for a vote that no action further action is required. Now,
thank you, Convener. I'll amend that slightly. Just in terms of the technical processes, as Mr. McGowan pointed out. What I'll maybe do is have a vote first on whether you feel that the grounds for review have been established. Bearing in mind, I would agree that the public health side of things is very much a grey area in terms of the appropriateness to licensing. I think we're all in uncharted waters in terms of the coronavirus impact on things, but Ms McGowan's absolutely correct in terms of the case law on other matters. It has to relate to the sale of alcohol, obviously, and the consumption of alcohol. So that's definitely the case. There is, of course, two parts to the police review. There's the crime and disorder as well as the public health. So I'll maybe ask you first just to confirm whether or not you feel that the grounds for review have been established, and then we'll deal with whether there's any action on top of that. So basically just yes or no if you feel whether the grounds have been established. Convener?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor McClellan?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Dunbar?
Yes.
Thank you. And Councillor Grant?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so on that basis, and as I said, it is a premises license review. So my apologies, Councillor Cameron. The options were open were if the board determined that action was necessary. So yes, obviously it is perfectly open to you to take no action. So that's what's been proposed. So I'll just ask you whether or not that's agreed, Convener.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor McClellan.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Dunbar.
Agreed.
Thank you. And Councillor Grant.
Agreed.
Thank you. So no action to be taken against the premises licence holder. The only other item is whether the board consider that any of the conduct of the persons named warrant the review of a personal licence. What I would say, and I'll maybe look to Sergeant Flett, see if she's got any information here. Tracy Allison has obviously been the person that's been named most. I don't see her being named in the police letter as having a personal licence. We don't seem to have any record in our system as her holding a personal licence with ourselves. It may be she might hold it with another authority.
No, it would appear that Tracy Allison is not the holder of a personal licence.
Okay. So in terms of, there were 2 other people named, but I don't think they played as much a role. So it's whether you feel that the circumstances warrant review of any of those 2 personal licence holders.
Councillor Cameron.
In the police letter, it made it quite clear that Tracy Allison was in charge, and she didn't have a personal licence. Presumably, the person that put her in charge was the leaseholder.
The premises manager, I believe, yeah.
Okay, yeah, who presumably holds a personal licence.
Yes, yes. The premises manager obviously doesn't have to be on the premises at all times, but it's still obviously responsible, yeah.
I suppose I'm really asking you questions, Mr. Munro. It sounds as though that person was out of the country, but left somebody in charge of a licensed premises who didn't have a personal licence. And therefore, is there a responsibility on the leaseholder?
Well, that I guess that's something for the board to consider, but there'll be many premises who only have one personal licence holder, and it's their job to ensure that the training programmes and everything are up to date, so that whoever is left in charge knows the procedures, knows the policies. So my advice would be that it would only really be appropriate to look at the DPM if there was any evidence to suggest that that wasn't done. Personally, I'm not convinced that that would be the case in this instance, but it's obviously a board decision.
Yeah, no, I'm happy with that, convener. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Clearly, I think if Tracy Allison had been a personal licence holder, we certainly would be calling a review of that licence. Again, I think what we've got to look at was the evidence provided by Mr. McGowan, which showed that there was proper training and there was nothing amiss in terms of the running of the pub. I think what we've seen is an individual who perhaps has been foolish at best, but reckless at worst. And, the matter has been dealt with the tenant very swiftly in that she's been dismissed. So, I have got confidence, having looked at the documents that Mr. McGowan has provided, that normal running of the premises is done correctly and well by the DPM. So I wouldn't be suggesting taking anyone for a personal licence review. Is anybody otherwise minded? No. Okay, again, I think that's conclusive, Mr. Munro. I don't know if you want to, for completeness, ask us all.
No, I think that's fine, because there was no motion to have one, so that's okay. So just to clarify that the decision is that the grounds for review were established, but no action is to be taken against the premises licence holder.
Yes, that's confirmed. Okay, so that concludes the hearing on the Victoria Bar and personal licences. So thank you very much, Mr. McGowan, and your other people who were on. I can't remember all their names who came with you, but there was quite a few of them. So thank you for attending today in case we needed to ask further questions. And again, thank you, Sergeant Flecht, for your representation and bringing it to the board's attention, because clearly, that we do take these matters seriously.
Thank you from my perspective,